Yes, sir.
Okay. Good evening, citizens, guests, council, and staff. We're here for the September 1 City Council meeting of the City of Littleton. City Clerk, are you ready for the roll?
Mayor Cernanek?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Beckman?
Here.
Councilmember Brinkman?
Here.
Councilmember Cole? Here. Councilmember Hopping?
Here.
Councilmember Stallman?
Here.
Councilmember Valdez?
Present.
Thank you. If you could all please stand off your hats for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council, we have an agenda that's been posted. Looking for any changes if desired. Seeing none, the agenda will move forward. Looking for a motion on the certification of minutes.
I have a motion. I move to approve, based on the clerk's certification, the August 18th video as the minutes for the August 18th, 2015 regular meeting of the City Council.
Second.
Council, we have a motion and a second on the certification of minutes. Ed?
Debbie?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. And now we come to unscheduled appearances. Unscheduled appearances are an opportunity for any citizen to express opinions and ask questions regarding city services, council policies, or other matters of community concern that are not part of the scheduled agenda. Generally, an immediate response should not be expected. Typically, issues are referred to city staff for follow-up information or research and reported back to the council and the individual that initiated the comment or inquiry. If any citizen would like to speak during unscheduled public appearances, please complete a green citizen card, and those are located at the rear table at the entrance to the council chambers. There is a 4-minute limit, and please provide the green card to the city clerk or leave it at the podium. Is anyone looking to comment during unscheduled appearances? Betty?
Council. I'd like to write my comments so I don't wander.
And state your name, please.
My name is Betty Harris. I live in District 2. Got it right this time.
Yes, you did. You still live there.
The reason that cities and other governmental entities codify design minimums and standards is to maintain the quality of life for the community, provide for safety of the residents of new development, as well as the safety of residents surrounding the development and elsewhere in the city. These codes are not intended to be an affront to developers, nor a moneymaker for the city, but rather are designed to protect the people and businesses from disorder and dangerous conditions. Minimum street widths, off-street loading requirements, and on-site parking requirements are all there to protect the safety of all the residents. They are also there to preserve the quality of life which Littleton citizens have come to expect and which also attract more people to the city. Design standards and minimum requirements should not be waived because they are expensive or inconvenient to the developer. If any of the standards are inappropriate, then those standards should be changed for all development in the city, not for a specific development. If the development standards are inappropriate for a particular development because the developer is going to address concerns raised by the standards with alternate structures or design, those alternates should be presented to the planning board and the city council through zoning and platting as required by law. What is highly offensive is for the city manager to waive well-established street design, parking, open space, and other standards for a development that he's personally in favor of, contrary to the requirements of the law and over the objections of the community. The council has previously been requested to have the staff produce an analysis of the Grove project that highlights any code and design issues. To my knowledge, this has yet to be provided. It is my understanding that the city staff is responsible for code adherence, and that they do this kind of analysis as part of their normal duties. Since it is the job of the city staff to enforce the codes as they apply to all citizens as well as all development, and since it appears that this is not being done for this specific development, then the question that comes to mind is, whose palm is being greased here? If the city staff is not going to require adherence to the city code, then they must not be needed as staff, and we could save the money paid in salaries to them for not doing their job. If the city staff is not doing their job because they've been told to look the other way when someone else needs to be let go, and the citizens can pay less taxes since these salaries are not needed.
Thank you. Others? Paul?
Good evening, Council. Paul Bingham, 236 West Delaware Circle. First, thank you very much for the pizza and ice cream last Tuesday. We enjoyed that. A couple comments about the Grove. What do I want? I put this, Doug, thank you, Doug. A month ago, I put this on the counter here. What do I want? Please, I'd like to see a staff report. Staff reports are normally provided for development projects, or some detailed explanation of how this Grove project is justified as a use by right with no public hearings. A month has gone by, and we've not received a staff report on the Grove proposal. At that time, the city manager agreed to provide such a report. So far, we've neither seen nor received one. As the city manager's boss, we'd appreciate it if you folks would instruct him to please provide one. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Others? Pam?
And I'll ask Doug for the light, too. Good evening, Council. So I also am here. I was here a month ago asking for the staff analysis report on the Grove prior to city action. I'm going to say that the Grove use by right claim actually violates code. It violates numerous other sections of city code. The burden of proof is on city staff, not us. And protection of city and standards is on you folks. So we're here to appeal to you. Problems. The August 28th Grove Site Development Plan violates a lot of municipal code, very significantly degrades public health and safety. And I'm also going to mention staff interpretations of governing documents relating to the Grove are much looser than they have been in past reviews. And I'll observe that you folks uphold the municipal code and the quality of life and character of the city. So that's where we're looking at you. So the ask is to provide the staff analysis report for the site development plan, and I've said this before, but I want to mention specifically, it should list exceptions to code in the SDP. It should provide a rationale for consideration of those exceptions and impacts if the exceptions to the code are allowed. And it should contain an assessment and listing of the compliances and non-compliances also with the Sheriff's Building site guidelines and the Littleton Boulevard Corridor Plan. And you could also mention the Stern Park Neighborhood Plan as well. And then I'd like you to review it in a study session. We, the public, should hear what the city is about to do with a proposal of this magnitude and with the proposed exceptions to code that are in there by staff. This is a radical departure from the way this has been handled in the past. And I'm also going to make a suggestion that you consult an independent legal advisor, get an outside opinion of the impact and the consequences of allowing staff to violate Muni Code. This will be the most popular and best use of our taxpayer money that you can make, I think. And the risks the violations of code may allow and provoke legal action against the city. Also, a poor fit structure with compromised functionality and quality could be built on a site that can't be hidden. The build cycle for this type of development is almost over. The current owners will make their money on the front end. Within 10 years, this could go fail, like Alexan, like Dish. And then we've got a big problem. So let me mention two things. This proposal has the same R3 rezoning issue as Broadstone. However, it proposes that the R3 parcel is not a part. Instead of asking for rezoning and integrating it into the proposed design, yet they were eager to do a subdivision exemption to combine the unplatted portion with the platted portion in order to plat it without public process. R3 parcel could be sold separately under the scheme. R3 not a part is simply not acceptable under standard professional practice. So on R3 is a fire lane, retaining wall, stairs, and lighting that are required to support the apartment uses. They're not allowed in R3. So the R3 rezoning should be brought to Planning Board and Council. And let me just show you the land use table. Permitted use is single-family detached. 2-3 family residents and townhouses are only allowed by PDO. B2 doesn't allow any of that. So P
Thank you, Pam.
is by right. It's not there.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Yes. Pam, you also need to submit a card.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Patrick Fitzgerald. I'm a registered professional civil engineer in the state of Colorado, and I'm speaking about the deficiencies that I've found in the Grove proposal. The first one is a public safety issue in that the site triangle at the corner of...
Robert, if you could speak right into that mic, please.
The site triangle at the corner of Littleton Boulevard and Bemis is improperly drawn on the plans. Properly drawn, it lies there with the building intruding 12 feet into that space. That impairs the sight line from Littleton to Bemis. Another similar problem is at the northwest corner of the building. It is only 13 feet from the curb of Alamo as it comes uphill and around into eastbound Littleton. That will obscure traffic view across that corner. And then furthermore, using this same illustration, codes require 19,000 square feet or 44/100ths of an acre of unobstructed open space to be evenly distributed, and that's the words the code uses, along the adjacent public rights-of-way. When we do that along the rights-of-way of Alamo, Littleton, and Bemis, we come up with a requirement for a strip 26 feet wide. This building is proposed to be built right on the right-of-way line, thus it intrudes 26 feet into that required open space. On the Bemis side, it intrudes 18 feet into that required open space. The developer has provided for no open space along Bemis or Littleton. The next problem is Bemis Street itself. Standards of engineering practice and good design, as reflected in the subdivision codes of the city of Littleton, require such a street to be 44 feet wide from curb to curb. Currently, it's 35 and a half feet wide. And moreover, the curb is going to be pushed out to the east at this point and make Bemis only 29 feet wide. That's not enough room for people, for the residents on the east side of Bemis to park at the curb, and it may not even be enough width to allow safe passage of two-way traffic. With these sorts of violations, I contend that it does not meet the code and therefore is not use by right. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Anyone else?
Good evening, Council. Jeannie Erickson, District 1. I'm here tonight to request something that was promised to the citizens and City Council a month ago by the City Manager. That is the document that shows how the project called The Grove complies with a use by right in B2 zoning and complies to the city's codes. This proposed project is located at the corner of Littleton Boulevard and Bemis Streets, across the street from the historic Littleton Courthouse. 2 years ago, I stood in this same exact spot, speaking regarding the same property and how the development was proposed at that time was not the right fit for this charming historical area of Littleton. Many, many citizens stood before you to address their concerns about a variety of issues that made that project undesirable for the neighborhood and for Littleton in general. You as a council voted the project down. Now, 2 years later, what has changed that anyone would think that citizens want apartments in that location? Because it was a rezone issue, we, the citizens, were allowed to speak. But now I see that the city manager wants what he wants in that space, so let's see how we can get around taking public comment. A large apartment complex on this corner is not the right fit. Again, I'm requesting the City Council and the citizens be allowed to view the document that shows how this proposed project complies with use by right, which therefore allows no public comments on the project, such as a public hearing. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Lou Sullivan, District 1, to speak on the Grove. And I don't like speaking in public, so this means a lot to me. I've lived on Bemis for 35 years, and I'm concerned about how a building of this size will affect traffic in my neighborhood, especially since parking, loading zones, and street regulations are being manipulated by the developer. The less than adequate parking required for residents is commercial. Hallways are commercial. Really? I don't see how that fits. This is the ultimate in high finagling and skirting around the true purpose of a B2 zoning, requiring a maximum 50% residential. The right to build still should follow all the rules and guidelines that are in place. I might be wrong, but I don't believe live-work units are included in a B2 zoning description. Residential uses in a B2 district has to be within the same structure as non-residential uses. There's two buildings, and that does not follow that requirement. The Littleton Corridor, Sheriff Building Guidelines, and Stern Park neighborhood plans are being ignored. They were written for a reason, Please don't ignore them. The quality of life in Stern Park will be severely impacted by this development. I just had someone visit me today who remarked on how quiet my neighborhood is. I fear that will not be the case if this project is approved as planned. I'm hoping staff has been employed to protect the city and its citizens by ensuring that all the rules are being followed. According to zoning regulations 10-1-7, the city manager is vested with the duty necessary for the enforcement of this title. As a citizen, I will hold council and Michael Penny responsible for ensuring that staff is doing their job. Therefore, I would like to see the staff analyst report before any more action is done. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
Hi, I'm Nancy Barger. I live at 6149 South Bemis. 2 years ago, I was part of the group that appealed to this council for consideration of not building Broadstone. And it seems so impactful to me that we're here again pleading for the same sort of thing, of not destroying a neighborhood, a park, a street. And there were many, many people, if you recall last year, 2 years ago, that were behind a movement to not build Broadstone, and I'm sure we can marshal that group again. But what I want you to think about is that we have the right to a quality of life. That's what I'm committed to in Littleton. My parents lived in this house, and when they died, I moved in. I've made improvements. I participate in the community, and it's really important to me that we not have destruction of our neighborhood. And I ask you to really consider what the totality of having a project like this come into play. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Seeing one more.
Doug, could I get the projector, please?
Is there one more?
That's all right. Don't worry about it.
No, listen.
Need one more.
Two more. Good enough, thank you. Appreciate it.
I think I gave one of the wrong documents away. Oh, well, I'll just wing it.
Oh, she wrote notes already?
All right, I'm Leah Burkhead. I live on South Bemis Street in District 1, across from this project we've all been talking about, the Grove. It's been kind of a frustrating last month with y'all being unable to get involved because of the project's claim of use by right. We would contest that claim because use by right means that it has to comply with all of the B2 zoning codes, but I understand that you all are responsible for coming up with the policies, and the city is responsible for implementing and following those procedures. So I understand why you can't get involved, but I am going to encourage you to get involved because there are areas that are still out of compliance. A new plan has been submitted on Friday of last week, maybe as a result of some of the non-compliances we brought to your attention. And at first glance, there are still some major issues with the plan. So it's been really upsetting to be kind of cut out of the public process and to see that the sheriff's guidelines are not being followed still. Like other citizens said, we were all up here 2 years ago and you all turned this project down. This is almost a twin project. So I wanted to point out a couple of portions where the code does specifically say that design guidelines have to be followed. So, uniform application of regulations, except where the portions of the city for a general PD plan or PDO has been approved, or for which design guidelines have been adopted by the board, the regulations shall be applied evenly, to summarize that. So right there it says you've got to follow design lines. You can't even treat this site like a regular B2, not that the project even complies with B2. Secondly, in the site development plan procedure in the code, it also says that design guideline, that the site development plan should be compared with the design guidelines. So there it is, 2 spots in the code. Those sheriff's guidelines really do apply. This has been a really awful month, just not having any say in any of this. We haven't gotten too far with city staff who you've encouraged us to talk to, and regrettably, I've had to talk to a land use attorney who said this is egregious. So I think you really ought to consider that second opinion from somebody other than your employees and people who seem to have some interest in this thing happening. I regret that that's the way it is. But lastly, I wanted to say that I've been trying to think about what options are if this project does get approved in its non-compliant form. And I talked to the zoning official about the Board of Adjustment. So it says here, the Board of Adjustment shall have the power to hear and decide appeals where it is alleged that there is an error in the decision or determination made by the city. I've been told that this does not apply, that I could not do this, and I could not see an application for what it would look like to try to do this. So I think there's another, this trust is disappearing.
Thank you, Leah. Seeing no one else approach, we'll move on to comments and report.
Now they're coming down.
Kim Glidden, 5739 South Curtis Street. For years, downtown merchants have tried to create the present parking problem in downtown Littleton that we now have, which is great, yet my customers are unhappy. So I continue to say to them, let the city know that 2-hour parking is not enough time to have lunch and shop. One of my customers who enjoyed lunch and spent over $600 in various shops returned to my gallery very upset after receiving a ticket for parking 3 minutes past the 2-hour limit. If parking was metered, customers could return to their cars, make an additional deposit, and continue shopping. But due to the 2-hour time limit, customers often decide to leave the area rather than hassle with finding another parking place. A less expensive and more immediate solution might be changing the parking on Main Street to 1 hour and extending the time limit on side streets to 3 hours. This option allows for 1-hour parking for customers wanting to quickly visit just 1 or 2 shops, and 3 hours for people wanting to enjoy an extended lunch and time to walk and shop the area.
Thank you, Kim.
New topic. My name is Carol Fay. I am in District 3. I was alarmed last week when I attended the final hearing of C470 expansion to 8 lanes, which is to start next summer. I learned there that there is no plan to install any sound barriers for most of Littleton. The noise in the south end of Littleton is always a steady roar around the clock. That's with just 4 lanes. Doubling the lanes, as is going to start happening soon, is going to at least double the noise. More cars will go faster, more out-of-staters will zoom past on their way to the mountains. Besides making the close-by neighborhoods more miserable, additional noise will go farther into the Littleton that's not affected today. I talked with CDOT's sound manager. His documentation shows that there will be no sound barriers for Littleton except for a couple of apartment complexes. City council members, how can this be? Here are some of the reasons that I've learned. One claim is that there is already too much noise there from County Line Road, so C470 isn't responsible for additional noise. If there's too much noise now, isn't that a reason to install sound barriers if there's going to be more? Another reason that CDOT's most recent measurements on the nearby section of C470 squeaked by at just 65 decibels, just 1 unit below the state requirement that 66 decibels requires sound barriers. We learned that CDOT's test was conducted for just 2 hours at one of the quietest times in the middle of the 4th of July weekend. Oddly, the results were lower than in even previous years, although traffic overall has increased enough to warrant doubling the size of the highway. A Highlands Ranch neighborhood commissioned a confirming sound study by a reputable engineering company. Unlike CDOT's, this test was done according to engineer protocols that require sampling a variety of times, days, locations, and weather conditions. The result was 71 decibels, which is well above requirements for sound barriers, but CDOT refuses to consider these results. I watched a video of this year's March 24 City Council study session when CDOT assured all of you that all was well for the C470 expansion. The one mention of noise in the meeting was Debbie Brinkman asking if barriers would be included for new construction. There was no mention of current or projected noise measurements or protection for existing Littleton homes. Noise from doubling the size of C470 must be addressed now because construction starts very soon next summer. Would you City Council members please use your existing relationship with C470 to demand that CDOT install proper noise barriers to protect Littleton's future? Thank you.
Thank you. Marty?
Marty Bolt, 6187 South Windermere Way. I'm amazed at the repetition of this subject because everything that was said several years ago still applies today. Nothing has changed. As I recall, the traffic impact, that is new traffic activity to be expected based on the old plan was 1,360 cars a day, and the tragic impact in this neighborhood due to this traffic and the lights and everything else, nothing has changed. And it's very disappointing that these facts are still there, the conditions are still there, nothing is going to change, and it's been 2 years that the city, the staff, or whomever is responsible, has failed to look at this and consider it, and be ready and working to correct the situation and do something about future problems that are going to come up. But here we are, and due to creative reinterpretation of city laws, ordinances, or whatever, we're back here, and this thing is about to fly. And the recipients are the citizens of the impact of this thing. Once this is put up, they can sell it and do what they want, and they can leave town, but we are stuck with this thing. I would hope that you would look at the creativity interpretation of how we got there and reconsider the facts before you go forward with any of this. Thank you for your time, and God help us.
Thank you, Marty. Carol? Anyone else? So, seeing none, we move to comments and reports. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I get into the manager's minute, let me address the majority of comments we heard this evening. I normally don't respond, but I think on behalf of staff, I want to let everyone in the room know and let our city council know that we operate under the highest level of ethics and integrity. We do not make decisions. We were quiet for everyone. We do not push projects through. I do not give directives to ignore the code, make changes to the code, make, flip decisions around what happens. I'm not involved in this project. This is reviewed by our planning director and our public works director and by our city attorney. So let me explain when we say use by right what that means. A project comes in, and if you can meet the code requirements, it is a use by right. The Broadstone project came in specifically with a rezoning request, which is a quasi-judicial action to change the allowed uses on that property. That's what the developer was interested in doing. That developer obviously failed in convincing the council and the community that that project was appropriate for the site and went away. A new developer came in, looked at the code, made a determination that they wanted to be able to build a project within the allowed uses of the code. So they have been working on that process. We actually, in my opinion, have a great opportunity and have had a great opportunity, and the reason that there is no information out there is because we are still in the conversation with the developer. So as you all know, we have a new planning director who came on board. And so I asked her, based upon a lot of the comments and concerns that we have as staff, as well as the community, because we are not advocates for development or the community. We are a facilitator of the process to ensure that the values of the community are met and the rights of the property owner, be it a single-family home developer, somebody who wants to build a deck, or somebody who falls under our kind of terminology in this room of the word developer, all has equal rights under the code. And so a project is always a use by right as long as they can meet the code requirements. And so Jocelyn came in, and I asked her to start fresh, start over again, reset the clock, and start from page 1 and go through the code and go through the application. She goes through it, just for illustrative purposes, writes a list of deficiencies. Those deficiencies go to the developer, to the architect. That architect responds, changes the drawings, and it's an iterative process. And part of why there is no, so we have not issued, I should say the bottom line, we have not issued anything at this point because we're still in this iterative process. There are virtually no time constraints on the developer, on the applicant, to respond back to us. So we have been moving as quickly as we can to get those comments reviewed, get the new drawings reviewed, and then give that response back to the developer. They, to our credit, and everyone in this room, have been doing due diligence and getting back to us relatively quickly. That process takes time. We will not be issuing a decision unless the city attorney, the planning director, and the public works director all believe, with the level of integrity that they carry, the PE that our public works director carries, the quality of our city attorney, and the quality of our planning director are assured and confident that they can stand up in any scenario with a straight face and say this development meets that code requirement. That does not mean everybody's going to agree with those interpretations. It does not mean that everyone is going to agree with what the words are in the code and what they say and how to interpret them and all of that. But it means that your city staff has reviewed that to the level of depth that we are comfortable saying it meets the code requirements. If they don't meet those code requirements, if they get a final letter from Jocelyn and they finally just say, hey, forget it, we've gone as far as we can go, that project will fail on its own because we won't issue that approval for that. So when we issue that approval, that letter of disposition on that project, we will have written out, as I told council a month ago, we will have the full explanation of what our experience is, and there will be they will have met the code requirements. There are staff discretion within that code in certain areas, but there are no waiving of anything. There is no bending, stretching. We are inflexible, and I just want council to understand, and I want the citizens who came and spoke to have my assurance and my staff's assurance that we review these projects with a high level of integrity, and I take a personal offense that I or any of my staff would violate the law to get a project approved. I mean, at the end of the day, that project is going to be out there. Our review project will be out there, and our comments and our decision will be out there. And so it will stand the test when we're done with this. I have confidence in our staff. So thanks for that. So shifting. Thank you, Mayor. Shifting, so for those of you who don't come on a regular basis, we do a manager's minute. It's now turned into manager's 7 minutes, so I apologize for that. But so let me go through this. This is all the great stuff that's happening throughout our organization and community from all of our different departments. So starting out here, it is September, so happy September. Smile, everyone. We are having some fun. It's hard to believe it's September, which means a lot of the summer programs and events have wrapped up, but there is also a lot of good going on this fall as well. Around 400 tickets have been sold for the Brews and Views this Saturday at Hudson Gardens. Tickets are still for sale and can be purchased at the gate. Weather should be beautiful, and there are 31 craft brewers lined up. Live music in the gardens should be at their peak. I'm not sure whether smoking's allowed.
It's not.
Thank you.
The garden generally has designated areas.
Okay, there you go. The summer cleanup program has wrapped up with another impressive year of helping residents keep their properties clean. We had over 729 pickups, almost 19,000 pounds of metal recycled, and 45,000 pounds of electronics recycled. We are, because of the magnitude of the program, going to be making some changes next year, but it's a fabulous program. The Hazardous Waste Roundup will be September 12th and 19th. It will be at the Inglewood Service Center from 8 to 2. For $20, residents of either community can safely dispose of household waste that trash hauling companies won't take. In our library, the Summer Reading Program concluded with 3,000 children, teens, and adults participating. The number of adults increased by 56%, and more than 600 people enjoyed the Comic-Con that was held on the first day. And I think, Mayor, you attended that. Mm-hmm. I'm going to move on before you comment on that. The Littleton Police Department is only one of 25 departments in the country certified in the Missing Kids Readiness Program. We take this very seriously. And through the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, we have provided for specialized training for all of our personnel in responding to and investigating missing children. So kudos to our staff on that. The Historic Preservation Board awarded $50,000 in grants to property owners in the Main Street Historic District or individual landmarks in the downtown area that were used for commercial purposes. The historic duplex, now Buttercup Junction, and Susan Williams Boutique on West Alamo received $11,000 to replace cedar shake siding. The West End Masonic Lodge on Rapp Street received $20,000 to repair the brick mortar on the south side of the building. The Thomas Building, now Willow and Artisans Market, received $8,000 to replace old electric wiring. And the Littleton Electric, which is now the Altitude paddleboards, was awarded $11,000 to replace the flat roof with a tapered roof system. Building permits this year, as compared to last year, continue to show strong and steady increases. The values of permits in 2015 thus far is $123.5 million compared to $73.8 last year. Nothing like a good economy. The number of permits issued is 200 more than in 2014, about a 12% increase over last year, and that's year to date. So it's looking good right now. We're busy, and you'll hear about that in a couple weeks at our budget retreat. We've had really nice feedback over the past couple of weeks, and I wanted to share a couple of them with you. A citizen named Ellen Blackburn sent an email last week. Quote, I just want to say thanks for the great job you're doing promoting Littleton business and community. The YouTube videos and the use of Nextdoor East Heritage have kept me informed and excited about my community. I've lived in Littleton for over 20 years, run my business from my house, and I've never been happier and more excited about this community than I am now. I can't wait to see what the Marathon Oil property becomes, and I'm sure you'll do a great job of letting us all know once the businesses start rolling in. Thanks for your hard work. I think it's terrific. Another citizen, Ruth Schneider, contacted us last week to pay her compliments about the Littleton report. She loves it and said the staff does an amazing job, and she's never seen a typo. I was going to confirm that with Councilmember Cole. You can tell me later. Richard Caudill, a captain from Littleton Fire Rescue, sent the following note. I want to take a moment to recognize our city services for the outstanding job they do, streets department, engineering, parks, and all the others behind the scenes crews I cannot name in a single email. During the surprise storm, August 10th, an incredible amount of water was unleashed into the city. The streets and creeks quickly filled with water, thanks to the incredible work these folks do. Within an amazingly short time after the storm passed, the water had receded from the streets via the storm drains, and the creeks were quickly back under control. Our sincere thanks from an emergency services standpoint, and I'm sure the citizens we all serve. And lastly, we are still in conversations. The county is interested in developing the intergovernmental agreement related to the TIF shareback, going back to them. We do not have an IGA with you, but we are slowly but surely moving forward. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, City Manager. Councilmember Cole.
Well, okay. So I have a question for the City Manager. So it would sound to me as though this process of review for the Grove is so detailed, we're not likely to get this resolved before the election begins. Is that what you think?
No, I would hope we get it resolved.
Well,
much
I would
before
too,
then.
but
No, I'm confident we'll get it resolved.
Okay, and you will make that public for council and the citizens?
As we committed, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Again, the approval is a public document, and while we don't normally go into the depth that we've committed to for you, we will do that based upon the concerns that have been raised.
Okay.
So, yes.
Then on the issue of the 2-hour parking downtown, most of the time when I go downtown, I have the leisure to walk, so I don't have a parking problem myself, but I frequently meet friends from out of Littleton at restaurants for lunch downtown, and they have a bit of a challenge with the 2-hour parking, and most of the time they don't shop because we spend a lot of time eating at the tavern, and then they have to get because they're running out of parking time. So I wish we could discuss either as a council or staff, indeed lengthening that time that was suggested, at least on some streets, so people could indeed take time to spend more money.
That 2-hour came in a partnership with the downtown merchants and the city, and so we'd be happy to re-engage with the downtown merchants and bring something back to council.
And I know we're hoping to have some other parking resolution downtown, but we're not there yet.
Correct.
So, and then about the issue with the noise from C470. I wish perhaps council would put on a study session, discussion of whether or not the city might do something to build a sound barrier a bit like was done on Bowles. I think that was built at a certain time, and since then the upkeep is up to the people who live there. And I have no idea how much that would cost, but I think it might be worth looking at. Certainly that neighborhood is a very nice neighborhood, and I would hate to see people start slipping away, going elsewhere because of noise. And I think, hold on a half a second, so I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Stallman?
No report, but a couple questions. City manager, on the noise, I think the difference between this and bowls, of course, is that we widen bowls ourselves, so we had an obligation of some sort to make some accommodations. I absolutely agree. Hadn't really, from my own account, I had honestly, I know Debbie and the lady Debbie had mentioned or asked about, Councilmember Brinkman had asked about sound barriers in terms of some of the new construction attributes. It wasn't something that came up, and I just hadn't thought about it, but I think it's an eminently fair point to have CDOT look at this, and if it's their project, it's their nickel, and it should be part of their cost structure if it's an impairment of property, welfare, so forth and so on, as far as our citizens are concerned.
I'm going to ask Mayor or Mayor Pro Tem, who have been involved on the C470, to comment on that.
Yeah, I can comment a little bit. First, a little bit of an opinion. CDOT has a process, and it's going to be an act of Congress or an act of something else in order to deviate them from the process that they follow. And part of that process is the noise study. And one of the folks mentioned, and I did observe the Highlands Ranch group was represented at one of the CDOT 470 hearings, which I attend, and their information was taken. They were listened to, but the outcome, because one of the other representatives like myself said, so what do we do with that? What does it mean? And they were very adamant that they're standing by their study, and they're of the position that it could be challenged, certainly, and I think that's where Highlands Ranch was going. But I have to tell you, as an observer to that process, they're locked into their noise studies. One of the other observations that I had was, based on hearing people in the room talk about it, it's entirely possible that what C470 puts out in terms of noise today, without an expansion, is much more than what it was when perhaps people built their homes there along the southern edge on Highlands Ranch and whatever, 15 or 20 years ago. And that the big problem is it is just noisy. So there's no intent on CDOT's part to move forward and try to readdress noise based on the current construction, because that was all part of the environmental impact statement and the noise study back, when they built it all those years ago. And I think that model may have very well been flawed, and I think the sound just supports that. And then when you put that additional lane model, which it's just a model, to what they have, it's not tipping the scale, because it may have been faulty to begin with. I mean, that's just my observation, and I'm certainly not a sound engineer. But I didn't feel comfortable with the decision that CDOT had. I was not comfortable with the decision that CDOT had regarding their noise study, but as were several others in the room, we didn't see what an alternative would be. So that's that piece. I just think we're up against something really difficult with CDOT. But the other piece is, I think a sound barrier down there is probably a great idea and probably is something that could be done. I could see a situation very easily where Littleton could put a small amount of money in, Douglas County could put a small amount of money in, and we might be able to find another resource. But one would be clearly that you could create a district down there and do improvements based on a taxing district over a long term, and I think it would improve property values and might have some value, similar to getting a road paved or a fence put up outside of a project or something. So that's kind of my thoughts, but I'm not very optimistic about the CDOT piece. I would say that the best thing that's happening is the Highlands Ranch folks are getting together, trying to address it, and their issue is the same as it is for that little piece of Littleton there. And then just finally, they were very specific, saying that they did address that piece of Littleton in their studies. So it wasn't like it wasn't included. I'm just questioning the amount of noise. So that's not real helpful, but that's kind of the circumstance that I think we're in.
Thank you, Bruce.
Actually, I had one more other question, but appreciate the following. A lot of the Grove comments, and I wanted to maybe ask for a clarification. I guess it's my general understanding when these types of projects come in, whether it be Marathon, Breck, King Supers, Nevada One, any of them, that there's a plan that's put in, a development plan that's submitted, and then there's a give and take process from a feedback perspective. So it sounds as if from the comments that there might be an expectation that a plan is submitted and it's a final plan, and if it doesn't pass muster, that's the end of it, kind of thing. But
Yeah,
is it how iterative is the process?
It's absolutely iterative. You're absolutely right. I mean, a plan is submitted. We respond to that plan with a list of deficiencies, and the developer can either choose to deal with those deficiencies and come into compliance or walk away. That's their decision, which is essentially why we either issue an approval or it doesn't happen, because we don't issue a denial because they don't meet the conditions. So we don't issue an approval, if that makes sense. And it is completely iterative. I mean, it can be anything in that breadth of projects you just described. It can be a phone call from the planning director or the staff person to say, you need to amend page C4, send me a new one. And that one piece comes in and that gets checked off, and we're still waiting on a modified landscape plan or a modified drainage plan, et cetera. Okay. It's completely iterative, which is why I was saying we don't have an end date. We were thinking we were going to have an end date, but we started over again on our review, and so Jocelyn sends them a list of deficiencies. They respond to that with a new set of plans. She looks back through it again. There's still deficiencies, sends out that letter again, and it can go on for, I mean, I'm not trying to say the sky's falling, but I mean, it can go on for months, if not years, and in the totality of it, everyone's interested in reaching a conclusion, so they're not doing that. But yeah, it's completely iterative, which is why I can assure you that we will not issue an approval unless they meet the conditions. And so while we appreciate the citizens coming up and saying, here's all the deficiencies, we're cognizant of those deficiencies as well, and we're not approving it with those deficiencies, which is why we're waiting on a new set of plans. Then tomorrow we're waiting on a new set of plans, and then we're waiting on a new set of plans. And eventually they will come into compliance, or they won't.
Right. Okay. So really, at the end of the day, it's on the developer to
Absolutely.
Comply or to not comply.
Yeah. It's not about us saying, oh, you don't really need to do that.
Yeah. So, for example, the gentleman who had the setback issue or the open space issue, if that, in fact, is a deficiency that's been identified, then it's up to the developer to say, okay, I can accommodate, and the economics of the project still work.
Right.
And if they don't, then they have to make a decision.
Correct.
So it's really, from the standpoint of our involvement, we're already collectively involved because we're telling them, here's the code.
Yep. And the code is very specific about those particular areas where there is, you can do this or this type of thing, where there is some level of staff discretion. But there's other places where it says, if you want to keep it, I'm going to use that term, use by right. If you want to keep it as a use by right and not move it into a planning board council conversation, you have to do this.
And then it's whether they want to or not.
Yeah, it's whether they want to or not. And if they don't want to and they want to ask for a variance, then they can run through that particular process.
Okay, thanks much. That's all.
Thanks for the question.
Councilmember Valdez.
All right, thank you very much. First of all, before I get into my 3 items that I have, it's exciting to see a lot of new people here, and I can only imagine how excited you guys are about what we're talking about tonight. I only wish we were going to talk about financials so you could see how real exciting it can get. My first item, though, I'd like to congratulate Littleton High School football team for their 21-0 win over Golden last Thursday. And congratulations to Kurt Krantz. He has a tough program that he's taken over a few years ago, and he's doing a great job with those kids down there. So really, get out, support Inglewood schools, not just the sports, also the debate teams, the theater. Please, everybody, get out there and support those kids. They do work hard, and they do see it when the community gets out there and supports them. Number 2, the meet and eat that we had at Kittering, I thought was maybe the best one that we've had yet. So congratulations and thank you to the staff for all those. I got to meet a lot of people here, at that event, so that was really wonderful to meet a lot of new people there. My third item is at Arapahoe Community College. They were mentioned in the June issue of Sports Car magazine. regarding the 32nd Annual Exotic Sports Car Show held at ACC in June. The car show, as many of you on council know, they benefit the creative options for early learning childhood education, including mobility issues such as cerebral palsy that a lot of kids are dealing with. So it's a fundraiser for those kids. The show was also thankful for this, if you will, city manager, for getting their banner up this year to help advertise the event. I think that was a first for them, and it was wonderful. It really helped them out. They had paid attendance. They had well over 14,000 people this past June. So it's closer, somewhere around 14,500. And with that in mind, I'd like to see maybe the city and the merchants, many of them are here tonight, maybe they can somehow work with that organization to attract many of those folks to come to their locations, whether it's D's or anything else, but they're right in that area. Somehow, if you guys can all get out there and work with those, with the organization, I think it's a win-win for everybody. So sit back in your seats, get ready to enjoy. This is a lot of fun, isn't it? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Brinkman.
I just wanted to make a couple comments about the C470. When that actually, they first started that, I went to one of the meetings, and one of the things that they said continuously was how they wanted to engage the communities, and this wasn't going to be done in a vacuum, and this was something that it was going to be a partnership, and we want to work with everybody. And interesting, maybe 2.5 years later, how that's changed a bit. We have talked for some time, and the budget just hasn't allowed it, but we've talked for years about the county line improvements, and we do have agreement with Centennial that they would work with us on widening of county line. And I don't know where that stands, but that may be an opportunity if we really are going to actually go into doing something like that, that we could help, make some improvements with the sound barrier at that point. But then I also agree with Councilmember Stallman that, this is CDOT's project, should be their nickel. Is there an opportunity, Councilmember Beckman, that Littleton can join in with Highlands Ranch on this study? And it seems always better to work collaboratively with someone else instead of running off in two directions. Is there an opportunity there?
Yeah, I think there is an opportunity. I don't know whether Highlands Ranch Metro District as a government entity is part of that or whether it's only an HOA citizens group. It would sure be great if it was the Metro District, because then we could really, get an intergovernmental thing going. And just to add, yes to your answer, but also part of the complication is that piece of Littleton actually doesn't abut against C470. It abuts against County Line Road in Douglas County, and then there's more space. And it's entirely possible that the sound jumps. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the issues that I was feeling listening to that is terrain makes a difference, up and down, movement of sound, et cetera.
Ask the people at Bleak Gulch if they can hear Hudson Gardens.
Absolutely.
We know sound jumps.
So I think for that reason, too, I think, maybe from a staff point of view, we could research and find that out, and at least find out some direction, and then see if, maybe CDOT's interested in relooking that. They are building some sound walls along C470, but they chose to say that this was not affected. So, Debbie, I agree. Councilmember Brinkman, I agree with you.
Thank you. I have no other comment.
Thank you. Councilmember Hopping.
Just a couple things, and it's because so many new faces are here tonight, so welcome. Although I'm sure you would rather be doing something else. The consent agenda items, and just this is a little bit of our process. The next item on the agenda is consent agenda items, and we hear those. That's how this smoking ordinance, which a lot of you are here for, are originally introduced, and then normally 2 weeks later you have a public hearing on that item. So just to show you how exciting a lot of these things are and that we do other things. Item 7A tonight is, it will be read into the record later, but it's an agreement really that when police go to a situation and they notice at-risk adults, that they cooperate with human service agencies so that we can get help to people. And that's a really important function of the city, and that we endorse, that we work with items like this. This is a normal thing that we do. One of the other consent agenda items is about community block grants, and those are essentially, it's ways to help your neighborhoods be better. These are for sidewalks, it's for roads, it's for parks, and money that is granted to those neighborhoods so that we have better quality of communities and better places to live. So that's a lot of our focus. It really is a lot of how we go about looking out for health, safety, and welfare of our community and getting us further down the road. The CDOT noise barrier discussion tonight is another example of that, and also we have coming up on second reading an issue about outdoor displays and merchandise, where I think the staff and council and everybody listened to input from the community to modify something that had been proposed that's going to come back to us tonight. So despite our best efforts, we're not always bad guys, and we do a lot of different things for the community. So just wanted to bring that out.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Beckman.
I didn't have any comments, particularly for myself, but I did want to weigh in on the parking issue. I remember back when, and I was around then, when the signs went up for the 2 hours, and the whole thing really started back. This is probably 25, 30 years ago. It was a long time ago. But we've always kind of negotiated it. And so I think that reflection that was mentioned by a couple people, that's not in concrete. It needs to be renegotiated. It needs to be looked at. The zones need to be reconsidered, 2 hours, 3 hours. But we got to have, but here's my but we've got to have a lot of public input. We've got to have the input from the businesses and the public down there that has in front of their houses some of that permitted parking, because it's a big debate. We're not going to solve all the issues for everybody, and not everyone will walk away pleased, but I think the tradition has been figure out something that works, and also part of that debate is the degree of enforcement that's done on it, and how it's done and what hours, because you can't enforce it 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. There's certain hours, and those hours could be reflective of certain things. So I really do think as a study session, maybe ultimately after staff's looked at it, but we really need to make this thing work for downtown.
Thank you, Council. A few things I'll start off and I'll mention about parking and metering, and appreciate some of the thought, Kim, on that. But I think Jose, I saw him enter the building earlier tonight, remembers back when meters were tried on Main Street, and I think someone went down the street and actually sawed them off. So those were not particularly welcome. So Mayor Pro Tem is correct in that, trying to make sure we do something that actually works. The other simple comment I wanted to make on the Grove project is, remember 2 years ago, what was denied was not really the project. What was denied was the request for rezoning on which the project was dependent, and it was the rezoning request that was denied. And so understand that from a technical perspective. But also, this council has asked for a change in the process by which things are reviewed. We used to previously have something known as the Design Review Committee, and that was probably a little more of an opaque process where the code wasn't necessarily consulted as the current city staff is using that. And so I have a lot of confidence that the process is being followed. Everyone wants an answer yesterday, and it's kind of interesting. Usually around policy to implementation, there's a gap in time. So be patient. The process is working, and it actually is one of those where it's much more exact and transparent than what we may have previously had. Comment about the meet, greet, and eat. We had one out at Trailmark, and as well as one at Kettering last week, over the last 3 weeks, and it was very nice and warm to hear a fair number of thank yous that occurred during that time frame. Thank you for some of the programs that we have that are new and different for seniors with regard to the Aging Well Resource Center and the Council's continued support towards the transportation program that's there. Folks like the activities that have occurred in the downtown area. Feeling Alive, thank you for the conflict resolution and program that we have going, as well as the communication programs across the neighborhoods. And probably the biggest area of complaint that I was attuned to was particularly comments were made at the session that we had on Kettering around traffic and sometimes speed of traffic. And I was once told that if folks are complaining about traffic, there must be a lot of other things that are going quite well. So that one's out there. Over the last half week or so, I've had the opportunity, Council, to be in a position to interview 27 sixth graders for their school leadership program, and it was quite interesting to hear them talk about the school's adoption of the 8 habits for highly effective people. I guess I had been sleeping at some point in time and didn't realize that 7 had grown to 8 now. So you may want to Google that to find out a little bit more. And then yesterday spent the morning with 11 16-year-olds from Iraq. It was kind of interesting because the delegation of students had both Sunni, Shia, and Kurdish students traveling together for 3 weeks. And it was interesting hearing some of their surprise observations about what they're seeing in the United States, and that a lot of things kind of matched some of their expectations, but probably the biggest issue that we didn't necessarily spend all of our time on, but was the biggest issue of their surprise, was that we do have homeless in our community, and it was visible to them. So that was something that was pretty interesting as we go through this. So, and then, Council, if you could make a note as we're going through some first readings. The second readings tonight will be scheduled for 9/22, so it's actually September 26th. So it's going to be 3 weeks from now for those second readings that we're scheduling. And on 9/15, the 15th, we'll have a study session on the budget. So make that note in your calendars. Okay, and that concludes my remarks, and we now move on to the consent agenda for this evening. Consent agenda items may be adopted by simple motion. All ordinances must be read by title prior to a vote on the motion. Any consent agenda item may be removed at the request of a council member. Consent agenda item 7A is Resolution 62-2015. This is a resolution approving a cooperative agreement between the City of Littleton and the Arapahoe County Department of Human Services. Consent agenda item 7B is Ordinance 90-2015. This is a first reading ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, increasing the salaries of council members. Consent agenda item 7C is Resolution 54-2015. This is a resolution authorizing the approval of the 2015 Arapahoe County Community Development Block Grant Program Sub-Guarantee Agreement for the Prentice Avenue Sidewalk Project. Looking for a motion on approval of the consent agenda items 7A through 7C.
So move.
Second.
Okay, Council, we have a motion and a second regarding our consent agenda item. Ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Council. We now move on to ordinances for second reading and public hearing. As we read through these, staff will provide a summary of the proposed ordinance and may or may not have the council ask questions. After the staff report, there will be an opening of the public hearing, and we look to have a very civil behavior for everyone that is present. And we will start with the rosters as we go through the public hearings and anyone else that would like to make comments. And then we will close the hearing, and then it'll be up to the council for its deliberations. So with that, we move first to Agenda Item 8A. This is Ordinance 84-2015. This is an ordinance amending Chapter 10 of Title 6 of the City Code pertaining to electronic smoking devices and smoking prohibitions in the downtown area. And Deputy City Manager Broughton, and you shouldn't stray too far this evening.
I won't, if you note.
Or alone.
All the, yeah, or alone, correct. All second readings, I believe, are mine, so. Here you go. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Mike Broughton, Deputy City Manager. Before you this evening, you have an ordinance number 84. It seeks to amend Chapter 10 of Title 6 of the City Code pertaining to electronic smoking devices and smoking prohibitions in the downtown. I have a short presentation for you, and then we can get into the discussion portion of it. So what's the problem? Undesired exposure to secondhand smoke by diners and pedestrians in the downtown. It basically comes down to what do you want your the visitors and the people of this community to experience when they walk around downtown. Additionally, increased use of electronic smoking devices and concerned with secondhand vapor. So there's two notes there. The industry has done a nice job with the vapor aerosol, secondhand aerosol. It does actually contain, according to various studies, there's nicotine, ultrafine particles, low levels of toxins, things like that. So it's, in general, just as concerning as secondhand smoke. Why is the city addressing the issue? State law allows local authorities to adopt laws that are more stringent than what the state has adopted. The state has adopted the smoke-free law. That was an indoor smoke-free law from a few years ago. We mirror our municipal code mirrors that law, and Littleton is not the first to address any of these issues. A number of communities have done it. I think I provided in your packet local laws that are tougher than the Colorado Clean Air Act, and those relate to both public spaces, what they've done with electronic smoking devices, where they've increased the distance from entryways where people are allowed to smoke, and where they've addressed smoking in certain outdoor areas. So that's, as a matter of fact, I think Fort Collins's new smoke-free area goes into effect today. So what the ordinance does and does not do. It allows smoking in defined areas in the downtown, and those areas are public alleys, parking lots, rooftops, and back patios, and those last three would only be with the owner's permission. So that is one change from first reading to second reading. Given the concern that we've heard from both council and the public, we did add rooftops and back patios to that exemption. And we can have a discussion on that if you care to. Continues to allow smoking in private homes, private residences, and private automobiles. This doesn't touch any of the private property. Continues to allow owners and managers of property not already required to be smoke-free by law to prohibit or restrict smoking. It does prohibit smoking in areas in the downtown, and think primarily those frontages along Main Street where currently they can only smoke 15 feet away from the door. This seeks to basically move the smoking into the back patios or rooftop patios, alleys, or parking lots. It does treat electronic smoking devices the same as tobacco and marijuana for regulation purposes. So this isn't just downtown, this is the entire city where that does affect that. And it continues to prohibit smoking in and within 15 feet of the entryway of a public space as defined by law throughout the rest of the city. So that's not just relating to downtown, that continues to be the entire city. And those public spaces are actually from state law, and we again mirror that code. These are all the places where smoking is already prohibited. It's quite a list. So I won't read all those off for you. revisions from first reading, so I've already addressed that. The original ordinance treated electronic smoking devices the same as cigarettes and marijuana, establishes that smoke-free area in downtown, but exempted alleys and parking lots. So we've added 2 additional exemptions for privately owned patios or spaces in the back of property, as well as exempting rooftop decks. Discussion on public outreach, what we did to get the word out. So we had 2 separate surveys on the ordinance prior to first reading. The first was openlittleton.org, which is the city's site to garner public input into policy questions. For those of you here who haven't registered, I encourage you to register, and you will then receive emails whenever the city does take up a policy issue. So the question was, would you support a smoking ban, including electronic smoking, in the outdoor public spaces in the downtown area? Councilmember Valdez, you asked for the specific language. There it is. So on that, on those, the responses to the Open Littleton question, verified Littleton residents, and this is where it's important to register at the site. That way we know exactly who is responding. So verified Littleton residents or business owners, if they happen to operate downtown or anywhere else in the community with a business with an address, they can register in Littleton. So of the support and oppose, 63% support, 36% oppose. And you can see we had 95 people respond who are verified Littleton residents. All respondents inside and outside of Littleton, the question was a public question, so anyone in the world, literally anyone in the world could respond to it, whether that be Littleton residents or people outside the community. In the support or oppose, 58% support, 42% oppose, and in equivalent testimony, that equals 14.3 hours of public testimony if we were to provide only 3 minutes each. So it's a great means of garnering additional input that you not necessarily would receive in a public forum like this. And then also we conducted face-to-face interviews, a face-to-face survey with downtown businesses, targeting primarily managers and owners in the affected area. This was done through an intern that we had in the city manager's office who actually went around downtown one day and polled people on the question of whether or not you'd support a downtown smoking ban, outright ban. This was before we had any of the exemptions or anything else that were discussed. So he hit 43 businesses, 10 said yes, 10 said no, 16 had no response or no opinion, or no, 7 had no opinion, 16 had no response, and in that case, that's because a manager or an owner wasn't present. So in those instances, he would give out the Open Littleton address and encourage folks to respond or comment on that site. And resulting from that public testimony, we listened. Concern was we pushed smokers into nearby neighborhoods. This was a concern that was raised both by the businesses and by the folks on Open Littleton. And as a result of that, we proposed, the proposed outright ban was changed to allow for exemptions for private parking lots with the owner's consent and alleys. An additional concern came up after first reading, concern with the business investment put into outdoor smoking areas and the competition for customers. And with that, to respond to that, we've exempted the rooftops and the back patios from the smoking ban. Enforcement, this has historically been a complaint-based enforcement. Really education-focused. Our police seek to inform rather than ticket on this issue. And to that effect, 0 tickets have been issued since 2011 on specific to smoking. That doesn't mean there weren't other tickets issued, but cited specifically for smoking, 0 tickets. Police indicate that enforcement under any new downtown regulations will remain complaint and education-based. They're not out there to ticket these folks, just inform them what the law is. And should council decide to move forward with this ordinance, staff will put together a full public campaign, probably with the help of a couple additional partners, to educate folks that are coming to the community and frequent our bars and restaurants and other places downtown, just so people know what the new law is. With that, these in pink and orange are the potential allowable areas to smoke in downtown. This doesn't include rooftop patios or the back lots or the back patios. This is just parking lots and alleys. Parking lots are dictated in pink. The alleys are dictated in orange. That blue lot is a public parking lot. That's RTD's parking lot for the light rail station. So that is currently under this ordinance where individuals could smoke should the property owner allow them to smoke on those pink lots. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Council, any questions?
Phil? Sure. Just going to ask if this was to go forward, Mike, what kind of program does staff have in mind in order to spread the word? Does the police department do anything different? What would happen in terms of implementation?
The public information campaign would be similar to what's been done in other communities. In your packet, I included samples of what Golden, Fort Collins, and Boulder have done, and it'd be similar to that, where we do signs, window signs, possibly table cards for restaurants, and other social media, local media, things like that to get the word out of the change.
And also, is there, the back alleys are generally lit by Excel, is that correct?
Correct. And there's generally one light per in the central area of the alley space.
Okay, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but are businesses required, or do most businesses with back entrances have lit back entrances? In other words, do they have the equivalent of a Tom Bodette porch light for everybody?
I don't know.
I mean, is that a lit area, or is that something that would be addressed later, or is that?
I would assume that if a business were allowing customers to enter from the back, they'd probably, for liability and other reasons, they'd want that lit.
Okay, but that's something we could look at. Okay, that's all I have.
Becky. Councilmember Cole.
Yeah, do you have, you probably don't have, or you would have shown us, we have the 15-foot limit from entryways.
Correct.
Do you have anything that would show us all the area that's excluded by that?
Unfortunately, no. We did try to figure that out, but our GIS system is not robust. It could not calculate that from 15 foot. We'd have to go down there with tape measures to do it for each door to really make it work. So no, we do not have that information.
Okay, actually, I would have thought you could have do a mock-up and then just do little radii.
We don't have
that
that information, no.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Stallman.
One of the, but essentially, I guess to follow up on Councilmember Cole's comment, essentially, since a lot of the entrances on Main Street are in close proximity to one another, there's already a fair amount of overlap amongst the business right away as it stands today. We're just making it uniform and essentially cleaning it up.
Correct, and you almost have a de facto smoking ban on Main Street already. There are some instances where there may be distances greater than 15 feet, but for the most part, you're generally there.
But just again to clarify, when we say smoking ban on Main Street, it's on the sidewalk right of way. Correct. We're not dealing with any of the specific businesses or anything else. Okay. And you had something, I noted in the packet, there was an article that talked about studies that had been done identifying potential increases in revenue after non-smoking related ordinances had gone into effect. Whether it wasn't clear to me whether it was statewide indoor or municipal outdoor kind of issues. But can you talk about that for just a moment?
Sure, and I think there are people here also that will testify to that fact as well. But I included in your packet something from the Cancer Action Network on smoke-free policies, Americans for Smoker Rights, and then also from our own Tri-County Health Department. You had items in there discussing the economic impact of smoke-free laws. And generally what they find is that there's no reduction, and in most instances there's actually a small increase to revenues when smoke-free laws pass. Granted, the smoke-free laws generally discussed here are similar to what Colorado passed a few years ago, where smoke-free, where bars and restaurants and other places went smoke-free, but there's a correlation there between the similar policies.
Okay, great, thanks.
Bill? Councilmember Brinkman?
Back on the 15-foot, that's a radius, right? So what is the average length of the sidewalk from the curb to a storefront downtown?
I'd have to guess. Do you have any idea?
10?
12.
I'm going to say
Yeah,
probably less than 15.
Yeah, it's less than
Okay.
15 feet, correct.
Okay, so currently then, in order to smoke legally downtown, you have to go, yeah, you have to go stand in the street, or you go 15 feet left or right, which you probably bump into a door, and then you'd have to go another 15 feet. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Valdez?
Where in the proposed ordinance does it talk about the rooftops?
That will be
Not till it's second.
610.2 general smoking restrictions, item number 1, and it is the fourth line, the last 2 words on the fourth line, excluding rooftops and back patios.
Line 28.
Oh, excuse me, yes, correct, thank you. Line 28.
Page 2.
Oh, yes. You mean the one that's highlighted? Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
And
I guess I do have a question when you get
Mayor Pro Tem Beckman?
Michael, when we put this together from staff, part of the guidance was to figure out the vape pen piece of it. Are you going to address that individually, or should I ask a question?
You feel free to ask a question.
Okay. Well, I'm having trouble balancing where the vape pen fits into this. All the orientation was previously due to cancer-causing secondhand smoke and those kinds of things. And there may be issues with the smell and the product that's in a vape pen, but it's not, to my knowledge, and this is what I'm asking, it's not necessarily a cancer-causing Clean Air Act kind of issue. I'm not even sure that the state has begun to look at it. So we're kind of on a path here that may at some time be addressed by the legislature, who knows, but I'm not sure. Why are we proceeding with that concern?
Sure, and it was a request from City Council that we move forward with the electronic smoking devices. I wouldn't wait for the state legislature to address it. We've done that in the past, and that doesn't work out in our favor generally. Smoking of electronic cigarettes is prohibited in Boulder. Currently, this is as of June 2015 here in Colorado. Boulder, Breckenridge, Brighton, Commerce City, and city-owned buildings only, Durango, Edgewater, Fort Collins, Golden, Greeley, Lafayette, Lakewood, and Louisville. So we're not breaking new ground by including it.
So if I owned a business in downtown right now, could I put a sign up in my business that would say no vape pens in my business, my bar, my restaurant, whatever? I mean, I'd have that option as a private.
Yes, as a private property owner, you always have a right to make it a no-smoking facility.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Bill, I have another question.
I get to ask mine first.
Okay.
Okay. Mike, with the modifications made between first and second reading, the improvements are to allow for those folks that have created private structures, and then basically to include and clarify the parking lot and alleyways, so that it's not truly a full smoking ban, as much as an allocation and as much a statement of what I'll refer to as a front yard issue, which is along the sidewalks and public ways, and so that it doesn't prohibit smoking. It just says where it might be in the area. So, correct.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Cole.
Yeah, I tried to find this online and I couldn't, so you may or may not know. So first, an observation. When I got here tonight, there are already several people in here, and someone commented about how smoky the room smelled. So I'm assuming there are several smokers here, which makes me remember places that I've been where I then go home and my hair, when it used to be really long, and my clothes and everything were smoky. Does that kind of smoke that is in your clothes when you're just exposed that way, does that have deleterious effect on health? Or is it breathing in the smoke right in the air?
I would assume it'd be more the smoke that you're breathing in that's also getting into your clothes, but I'm by no means a scientist, so or a public health expert, so
Okay.
I'm not necessarily the person. There are individuals in the that I believe are signed up to testify that could maybe speak to that.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. We will move to the public hearing, and here is how this will be managed. I will read 3 names. The public roster, as it is, includes 51 individuals. If everyone takes 4 minutes, we will be roughly 2 hours beyond Council's natural close time of 10 p.m. So if you hear your comments mentioned, you can say ditto to some folks that are there. Don't feel obligated that you have to make the public comment. I will indicate a yes or a no when I read the name, and I will also indicate whether the address indicates that you are a citizen or resident of Littleton or not. So with that, there is a 4-minute limit. I will open the public hearing at 8:06 p.m., and the first 3 names on the public roster are Steve Esses, if you could please advance, David Nunnery, and Bill Edrich. And state your name for the record, please.
My name is Steve Esses. I'm a non-smoker. I feel that this ordinance is reducing the freedom of the individuals, especially the people that visit the establishments downtown. I just found out about the changes in the rules. I just was able to look it over, and I feel it's going to reduce the patronage down there. I have a lot of sponsors down there to take care of many people in the city and help out and sponsor our softball teams, our lacrosse teams, our football teams, and a lot of our high school programs. Well, had they had less business coming into their establishment, they will not be able to probably do all that sponsorship anymore. Don't take the rights to the citizens away. You have citizens in that neighborhood that have to walk between the businesses and their home on that same block. They won't be able to smoke on their way to their house. They don't smoke in their apartment. They don't smoke in their front yard. You're going to ticket them for walking from one establishment to another and then try to give them a ticket or a warning? That's not right. Do not take the citizens' freedom away. As simple as that. I have no other real recourse except that if you can come to a better conclusion, maybe you guys need to be replaced with people that are more respectful to the rest of the citizens of the city. If you do it for this area, you will do it for other areas in the city. You will do it for the guys on Mineral, on Columbine area, on Broadway. I don't think it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Next up is David Nunnery, resident of Centennial. Then Bill Edrich, and then Russ Robinson.
My name's Dave Nunnery. I'm a longtime resident, a patron of all your downtown people down here. And this sounds to me like a solution in search of a problem. We've already determined that a 15-foot radius in front of the businesses puts you out in the middle of the street. We've got all the people in here that have put big money into making these things to meet the 2006 smoking ban. That has been adhered to, as far as the people that use their vape pipes or whatever they're smoking around here. Each and every one of these people are considerate to the rest of the patrons. There's nobody blowing smoke on anybody. If you have to go to these lengths to try to stop this stuff, we've already marginalized the smokers. We've already exiled them to the parking lot and the back seats of their cars, for crying out loud. And these businesses have already determined that these people are essential to the way they do business. These people come in, they buy food, they buy drinks. They're members of our community. That community right over there. They're members of that community. And we've got to be sensitive to them, and they've got to be sensitive to us. This is a simple problem that we don't need to address in city council. All you have to do is just have a little respect. And I'm tired of having to go out on the back porch to talk to my smoking friends. And that's about all I got to say. But if you got, if you're having a problem with a waft of smoke when you're going down a sidewalk, you guys must just go berserk when they snuff the candles at the church. Anyway, I'm done. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bill Edrich, Russ Robinson, Barb Robinson.
My name is Russ Robinson at 5729 South Kerr Street. If I could, Mayor, I'd like to ask the people that are opposed to this ordinance to stand. We've already had
your comments, please.
A lot of them leave that haven't been able to speak, and we would just like to show support of what we had. And as soon as they do that,
Russ,
I would
your
issue my
comments, please.
Okay. My comment is I'm opposed to the ordinance as it's currently written, not because I'm a smoker, because it's unenforceable. You already have an ordinance that's not enforced. This is just another example of passing laws that there's no enforcement mechanism behind it. I would recommend tabling it and coming up with a method of enforcement and or education of the public prior to creating an unenforceable ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Barb Robinson, Joe Trujillo, and Helen Deal. Good evening, Joe.
Good evening, Council. Joseph Trujillo, 5574 South Huron Street. Past owner of Jose's Restaurant. Now, I say that because when I was in the restaurant business in 1990, I finally came to the conclusion that washing my walls twice a year because of the smokers we had. And it wasn't because we didn't try to keep it out. We got all the smoke eaters and we got everything, but it just, if you have a facility that holds 110 are smoking, you've had it. So in 1990, I just made the decision that we would not have smoking inside. And it didn't, I lost 4 good employees, customers, but I gained about 200 because of the fact that there were so many people that wanted me to get rid of the smoking. So then in the process here, that became the law to stay outside and stay so far from your building, et cetera, et cetera. I just felt that this is a pretty severe ordinance to put in right at this time. I think that people should be given more time to absorb this thing. First of all, I came down tonight. I didn't know about all the changes that were being made. I thought, well, okay, now what do you do? Well, there was some pretty good changes made. However, I still think that you got to look at the people that smoke. They're no worse than the people that drink. And they're no worse than the people that eat too much. So where do you draw the line? So that's all I want you to do, is to be very considerate in your decision, because this does, I don't smoke, and this does affect people that are addicted. I think our government has a fault in all of this, because of the cigarettes years ago didn't carry all this nicotine in. They allow all this stuff now. They allow these companies to just put anything in there that's going to make a person addicted to it. Now you figure out who is responsible for this. So with that, I'd just like you to make a good decision and make sure that all places are taken care of when this goes in, because we don't have much space down there that you're showing us here on the blackboard to go. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Helen Deal, who's a Centennial resident, Carol Breezak, and Phyllis Trujillo. Okay. Carol? Okay. And Helen Deal? Okay. Janet Nielsen, Stephanie Nicolaou. If I mispronounce your name, I apologize ahead of time here. And then DJ Santisteven.
Hello, I'm Janet Nielsen. I live at 5721 South Lowell Boulevard, Littleton, Colorado. I've worked and lived and shopped in Littleton since 1977. I really do love Littleton. And I do not want to be called the city of Little Boulder. Okay. When I first read, I did not know about the changes until tonight either, but when I first read about the smoking ordinance in the paper about 2 weeks ago, I thought, here we go again. I thought of all the business owners who made changes and complied with the law when it first came out, and the money they put into complying with all these changes. And they were approved by the city. Anymore, even the federal government doesn't adhere to their own laws. If local government can't get a tax approved due to Tabor, then they apply a fee. It appears that American citizens are losing more and more of their rights when a minority group of people are offended by something, and somebody's always offended by something. Think of our veterans who fight for all of us, and tell them they now have to go to a back alley just to smoke. As a matter of fact, I was volunteering at the Veterans Hospital last week, and I made a cigarette run for one of the disabled veterans. He was a young man. He had lost his feet. Should I have told him that now was the time for him to quit? I think not. It was my pleasure to be able to help him. And I still want to cry when I think about it. It is said that if this ordinance is passed, tourism will increase. Quite frankly, I believe that is propaganda. If this ordinance does pass, time will tell if the city loses revenue or gains. One never knows. I am here to ask you to vote no. I respectfully thank you for your time.
Thank you, Janet. Stephanie, DJ, then Aaron Aldrich. Is that Stephanie? Okay, thank you. DJ, Aaron, and Tylene.
Good evening, Council. DJ Santisteban, owner of Dee's Tavern, located at 819 West Littleton Boulevard. My emails to Council will suffice for anything I have to say tonight. I would like to say thank you for the amendment, the language amendment, and also thank you for your time and efforts to public service. Thank you.
Thank you, DJ. Aaron Aldrich, Tylene, and Ditto from... Okay. Aaron? Okay. Amy Winterfield from Tri-County, Paula Hazlitt, and Kim Glidden.
Good evening, Councilor and Mayor.
My name is Paula Hazlett, 2763 West Riverwalk Circle. First, I would like to thank each and every one of you for responding to my email. My biggest concern was that there was an absence of a public process in the beginning of the wave of the ordinance. I know as things moved on, a lot of businesses were more involved, but I feel that at the beginning, many people were left out. I think that this law was being imposed before reaching out to the community. And I thank you that the amendment has now included the patios. But my fear is that the council could at any time arbitrarily change that. One more thing I would like to address is the concern of how the smoking and vapor ban will be enforced. I know a number of people that have been speaking with the Littleton police, and they have been saying that that is just one more thing for them to add on their many more important things that they have to do. So that's just one thing to think about. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Did we have Amy Winterfield, Kim Glidden, and B. O'Connell? Okay. Okay. And then Kim Glidden.
Phil, I couldn't.
What did she say?
Couldn't hear what she said.
Do you want to come up to the mic, please?
Good evening. I'm Amy Winterfeld with Tri-County Health Department. Tom Butts is going to be commenting on behalf of the Health Department in the interest of time.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kim Glidden, B. O'Connell, and Betty Harris.
I guess I could say a picture is worth 1,000 words. From birth, first and essential to life is taking a breath. In a perfect world, people who want to smoke step away and respect the airspace of others. Unfortunately, too many smokers who may be quite lovely people, but because they are nicotine addicted, do not act courteously. This Denver Post photo captures what I and my customers see on a daily basis and causes my gallery to smell like cigarette smoke. This situation persists even after I have politely requested smoking at a more appropriate location. I believe people are deterred from walking toward my business, and I can't imagine any business owner in downtown wanting this situation in front of their business. When I walk up and down Main Street, I encounter more people smoking in public spaces that infringes on my right to breathe clean, fresh air. I believe the passing of this ordinance is in keeping with today's enlightened societal values and the vision for downtown Littleton's future. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. I have B. O'Connell, or O'Connell from South Spotswood, Betty from South Cedar, and Nancy Barger. Any of those choose to come forward? Then Mike Weber, Greg Reinke, and Michael that lives on Littleton Boulevard, or lists an address on Littleton Boulevard.
Mayor, Council, I'm Mike Weber. I'm president and founder of the Colorado Vape Association. So we represent basically retailers, statewide professional organization of vapor product retailers who are dedicated to supporting the owners.
Excuse me,
employees.
Mike. Can you step closer to the microphone?
Sorry.
Thank you.
I'll start over. My name's Mike Weber. I'm president and founder of the Colorado Vape Association. We're a statewide professional organization of vapor product retailers who are dedicated and of the supporting of owners, employees, and customers within our industry with the latest product information, safety guidelines, and organized grassroots action. It had become aware to us just in the last week here about these ordinances and things, and we were caught off guard that we didn't feel that there was a lot of public testimony and input. Obviously, it's come to our understanding that there was surveys and things that were placed out there, but that caught us off guard. So we helped proliferate some of the information that's gone around here. Something I'd like to propose, though, and we helped organize against Arvada's ban on this, Denver's, as well as up in Greeley, potentially. But, what is really going to come of a new law here that, again, already appears to be enforced by a 15-foot rule? It's not very clear what study was cited for the chemical effects of the vapor itself. Not really sure where that came from. Also, wanted to touch upon obviously how the smoke will be enforced. More regulation on us business owners. That's not enforced. I think our police have a lot more to do. Denver police said the same thing. And I just want to, point out what these exemptions that you've now added are, what's going to stop them from being changed in the future. So just wanted to propose those things. Most everyone else had touched upon what I was going to say. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mike. Greg Reinke, please. And then Michael, looks like from Littleton Boulevard, 819 West Littleton Boulevard. Kathy Robbins and Nick Earls, excuse me.
Greg Reinke, 5663 South Prince Street. I have a little different thing to say tonight. I had something different, but I just saw a public humiliation take place just a few minutes ago. I think that's appalling. I think we're here to be civil, but to show a picture of a man who's done great stuff in this town. He's a board member of the Merchants Association, and he's done great work down here. And to do something like that and to allow that, I know I would never allow that at the Merchants meeting. Anyway, back to what I want to talk about. First off, I think where the problem with all of this has happened is a communication error. I contacted 25 restaurants on Thursday of last week. 3 of them had heard about this whole code. Most of them didn't know about it here. In fact, if the restaurants are here, have them raise their hand. They didn't know about it. I got a call from Frank Schultz with the tavern who said he didn't hear about this and if I could help. I believe the result of most of these people here is because I communicated, and I've been told I have poor communications. I find it amazing that one man can contact this many people and get them to talk to you. I think that's where the error is, because one of the things that we understood is you were banning them from the rooftops and the patios, and you corrected that. I think this whole fight isn't even necessary because you've already done it. You've corrected it. And we've had a law since 2006 that you can't smoke within 15 feet of a doorway. It's not enforced. I've never seen a police officer ever come and talk to them. In fact, they showed you from 2011, 0 complaints. The other thing that's interesting is, and Mr. Hopping, Councilman Hopping told me this, you understand that 15-foot radius is for a main entrance. If you force them into parking lots and alleys, it doesn't affect the back door. They could stand behind Doug Houck's shop within a foot of his back door and smoke. Is that what you want? No. You have great restaurants down here and great merchants and everything else. They've already made the special areas where you can smoke. I'm a non-smoker. I look like I've smoked probably forever. But I'll tell you, most of these people I know, and their smoke never affects me. They're very respectful. The restaurants, the tavern has a great area where you can go up and smoke. You have Ned Kelly's that goes right back into the patio. I've never seen any of these smokers ever come in the front and do that. I think you have great citizens that are taking the respect. I think if you just had gone and talked to a couple of the problem areas or the concerned areas, they're willing to work with you. You could help them. But putting this layer of just bureaucracy is the same thing you already have. And how are you going to enforce it? You can't enforce it now. They're doing it on their own. It's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Michael, Kathy, Nick?
I haven't been a smoker long.
State your name.
My name is Kathy Robbins. I live on Aladdie. I haven't been a smoker long. I did this to fight another addiction that I did have. I went into vaping, which is very clean. I studied vaping. There are no secondhand issues with it. It is vape, it's oil, it turns into steam. It's not going to harm anybody. My concern about this is that you're so worried about this issue when around my area, drugs is on the rise, needles in a park, parking is outrageous. Nothing is being done about that. You would not believe how I can see it be passed door to door, but yet our big concern is smoking. If we're really worried about secondhand smoke, the most thing you need to be worried about is diesel fuel. You got a lot of buses, got a lot of cars running, a lot of trucks. You're worried about all this secondhand cancer stuff? Well, the additives were put in there by the government. These cigarettes, Starbucks, addictive, added it. You can find people who will not give up Starbucks for nothing because of the additives. You got the same thing in the last 15 years over cigarettes. It is now the gateway drug to bigger drugs. The thing of it is, this stuff is not being addressed. I realize that we have non-smokers here, but a lot of stuff, guarantee there's skeletons in their closets too. Are we going to drag out everybody's skeletons? I guarantee at one time, some of these people are either ex-addicts, have problems, have done things that they are ashamed of. We don't need to be coming down on everybody. We need to start, otherwise, we're going to end up like Boulder. Do you know that they have a party every year, and it's a 3-day event? They hand out needles. There is drugs. They dogpile. No protected sex. High rate of HIV. This goes on every year. I have friends that attend it that I've been trying to clean up for years. I have 3 friends off of it. And this is heroin. And it's at every back door and in every corner. It's all over my neighborhood. We've got a park that they bulldoze needles up. It's called Needle Park. That's right, 2 blocks down from where I live. Not even little kids can play in it. But we're so worried about the smoking. We're not worried about the parking and anything else that goes on. We've had gunshots since July the 4th that nobody has even taken care of. Try to get the police to come out to my apartment. They don't. We have a lot of people from Arapahoe House and Arapahoe Middle, and they don't, and you know what? It is what it is. But my concern is you guys want to ban all this stuff, but you're not looking into the bigger problems. Thank you for your time.
5540 South Aladdie. Okay, Nick Earls, Sean Smothermon, and Scott Woods.
My name is Scott Woods. I'm the general manager of the Tavern in downtown Littleton, 2589 Main Street. My email will speak to most of my comments that I sent in earlier. The biggest concern that has been mentioned is how was it addressed to everybody. I found out about this. I sent in an email. We organized. And again, the concern is what's going to stop council from amending it down the road. It shouldn't be about feuds between one merchant and another merchant. It should be about fairness between all restaurants and bars and merchants in the whole downtown area. It's not fair just to target certain people. I appreciate you adding the verbiage for taking out patios. That's our biggest concern. But it's just very concerning that a month down the road, a year down the road, we could change it back and there could be another amendment. So thank you for the amendment. Taking out patios, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Scott. Nick, Sean, Robert, Martland, and Brandon Miller. Seeing no one approach on that. Jesse Ellis, Stacy Hazel, Joseph Roberto.
Hi, I'm Stacy Hazel. I live at 5532 South Grant Street in Littleton. I actually wasn't planning on speaking. I only heard about this a few days ago, honestly. I'm just a little bit confused because I'm just unsure. I've been vaping for the last year and a half. It's actually gotten me off of tobacco and it has improved my health. I'm a severe asthmatic. I haven't had to use my inhaler in over 8 months. I don't even know where it is. There are several studies over in the UK saying that vaping is 95% safer than smoking. Sorry, I get nervous. But vaping should not be classified as a tobacco product. There is nicotine in vegetables, all kinds of stuff. And I just don't think it should be considered as smoking. Because I know I haven't even used nicotine. I use 0%. And it's really improved my life. So I think vaping honestly saved my life. But thank you, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Joseph Roberto, Jeannie Erickson, Chris Campbell. Seeing none. Lou Sullivan, Vincent Sissel, and Tom Butts. Thank you, Lou. They're all against except for Kim so far.
Good evening, Council. I'm Tom Butts. I'm with Tri-County Health Department. I'm here tonight because we believe that this ordinance would take a step in making Littleton a better and safer place to live and visit. In general, historically, and what we've included in with the materials is some studies that showed that historically, as communities adopted smoke-free policies, there was not adverse economic impacts. They are focused on indoor air issues and not community air issues, so they are a little bit different than what you're considering tonight in some ways. We believe that smoke-free places protect everyone's health, especially children's health, especially the vulnerable folks in our population with asthma and other health conditions that are easily exacerbated by air pollution and smoke and particulates of any kind. Smoke-free places have been shown to reduce those kind of health-related illnesses and the issues that folks with those experience. Smoke-free places also help prevent youth from starting tobacco use. Our youth models after our activity. The more they see us smoke or vape, the more they want to do that. And we've got documented research from Journal of American Medical Association and other resources that indicate that that is the case for both smoking and vaping. Electronic devices do expose folks to things that are not good for your health. Certainly, as indicated, the British have said that vaping is probably 95% better than smoking. If smoking is our largest cause of preventable death in the United States, then I guess we're 95% less likely to die if we vape, but we're still inhaling a product that contains toxins, that contains things that can cause severe lung damage and potentially carcinogens. We believe that this action would reinforce Littleton as a healthy place both to live and to work and to shop, and that there are benefits to that. And it fits in with your Fit City and Live Well Colorado Healthy Cities and Towns campaign that you've undertaken, so we support that. We also believe that it's a positive thing for a college community like Littleton to experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Mary Manley, Caitlin here, and MG Monolis from...
MG Monolis to go to Mr. Ranke and church candles.
Go ahead, Mary.
I'm Mary Manley, and am I talking too loud right here? Okay. 2100 West Berry Avenue, and I have to endorse what the gentleman Tom just said. I'm very pleased to follow him, and I've never spoken before the council before, but I needed to come tonight for a variety of reasons to say, let's not wait any longer. I grew up in a time, 1964, When the Surgeon General statement first came out on the ill effects of smoking, it's 51 years later, and there's been nothing to contradict that. Only evidence has been amassed to say that not only does secondhand smoke, but third-hand smoke impact everyone. In fact, there is statistical evidence put out by the CDC and other relevant sources that say there are only 1 in 5 adults 18 and over that even smoke anymore, at least in the United States. Now you take 0 to 18, how many people would that be that smoke out of that particular age group? So I think we are indeed a majority. I do not think that it's fair to say that we're infringing on minority rights when we have a right to model for ourselves, our children, and as a very, very progressive community with traditional values, yes, but I don't think we have a right, I think we do have a right to speak for advocacy in giving us more of a say than perhaps has been expressed here tonight. We are in a high altitude area, and we also have a lot of litter issues with smoking. So however you want to say this, I just wholeheartedly do advocate for the smoking ban. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Caitlin, MG, you already mentioned, sorry. L. Marcone and Frank Aller from South Jackson Street.
Good evening, Council. My name is Vince Sissel. I am a longtime resident of Littleton, born and raised in Littleton. I live at 5860 South Greenwood Street. I am not a smoker, but I feel the way the council and the city has forced this legislation without the process of informing the citizens that it was coming. With Mr. Rinke notified old-time residents of what was happening. I look back to see Littleton 35, 40 years ago when there was no cars on Main Street. You could come down anytime during the week or on Saturday and Sunday, and there was parking places galore. Now, Littleton is ridden on the back of a golden horse here, and they have developed a retail established city with their merchants and their dining facilities that many cities or many municipalities related to this area would love to have the same type of exposure. Now we're going to say to those folks that smoke, go someplace else. We don't want your business in our downtown area. I think it's a shame that I don't feel that a smoker is impending on my rights when he has a cigarette in the open air. We've already seen that the inside of the buildings have a logical place where you can enjoy a meal or a drink without smoking. When we carry it out to the city streets, what we do is we create a pink elephant that I saw on the board where all of the smokers are going to be relegated to the back alleys or to find some parking lot. And that doesn't seem to me to be an interesting way to welcome the people that come into our city to take part in our goods and services. I urge the council to vote against this measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Vince. Caitlin, L. Marcone, Frank, Jennifer Anderson.
Hello, I'm Jennifer, 5607 South Fox.
I am a waitress downtown at the tavern. I also live in the Littleton area. On the rare occasion for inclement weather, I take public transportation at the point where I can't pull out the scooter. I get off the 66 right on Rio Grande. I walk 3 blocks to my restaurant, my work, and I enjoy my cigarette. This is some of the best time, it's the most pleasurable 7 minutes of my day sometimes by the time I get to work. And I just think that it would be a pain for the cops to have to stop me and educate me and tell me not to smoke. I'm a veteran smoker. I've been smoking for 22 years. We are a dying breed. There's only 1 in 5 anymore. I feel like the ban would just be a waste of everybody's time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Marcus Petchner, John Gunsner after that, and Brianne Santos.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Marcus Pochner, 2589 West Main Street. I'm a consultant and work with the tavern. We were one of the businesses that were contacted actually after a Denver Post story about this proposed smoking ban, and then by Greg on behalf of the Merchants Association. I just wanted to make a couple of comments about this, that I think the Deputy City Manager did a great job of showing this is a ban in an affected area. It is a specific area. Unfortunately, said specific area was not involved in the outreach. With full respect and absolute full respect to the city and to this elected body, these are the businesses, and I think a lot of them, I certainly can't speak for all of them, but you've heard from so many of them in this area that are against this ban, and I think respectfully, it deserved more than an intern coming in and asking if you would support or oppose a ban. So when we were notified about this, we hosted a meeting last Wednesday night. We had about 50 people show up. We asked, first of all, if anybody had received notice about this. We had 2 people raise their hands. These are all businesses in the area. 2 people were notified by an intern coming in and very quickly leaving after asking a question. I think it's so difficult. We all have invested because we love this city, and we think the downtown area, this old town, is so important to the city. What we bring there, we bring so many tourists, our residents, this is where we go, and yet we weren't involved in this very important decision, and respectfully, we think that's a flaw. I think secondly, just to kind of go through this as well, we at that meeting decided that what we should do is ask our customers to have our own outreach. So in the last 5 days, we passed a petition to customers that came into every respective business that was in the area or people that attended. We have 537 petitions by not all Littleton residents, but obviously people who were spending money in Littleton, coming to downtown Littleton residents or businesses, and said, we don't support this. So we'd like to enter this into the record tonight. I will just briefly say there were 5 points that were made about it. We didn't know about the amendment yet to exempt the patios and bars, so that's not addressed. But I think what's so important is that's terrific. We do appreciate that, but it doesn't change that the ordinance was flawed from the conception. And I think even today there's been people talk about that you'd like to see this expanded in other areas and parks and everywhere. So that's why you see the hesitation from business owners that at any time this ordinance can change today, even if you pass it with these amendments. So respectfully, on behalf of a lot of people that are opposed tonight, we had 44 people show up tonight. I'm sorry all of them couldn't speak to oppose this, and we certainly had over 100 in the room. We would very respectfully ask that you not only, that you stop this ordinance, that you postpone this ordinance, or just vote no on it. We don't think it reflects the values of this affected area because unfortunately these businesses, or the majority of them, were not involved in the process. Again, these are the 537 petitions. We'll enter that into the record. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcus. John Gunsner, Brianne Santos, Michelle Ducharme. Seeing none of them approach.
And what are the yes, no's?
They're all no's. Cassie Hathaway, Lindsay Gomalis, and Ann Perzade. They're all no's. And then also Darren's Perzash. Is there anyone else wanting to approach? Seeing none at this point in time, we'll close the public hearing at 8:49 p.m. Council, comments, discussions, or motion?
Phil, I'd like to make a motion on this.
Wait a second, Bill. There's a request that we break for 5 minutes.
Let's do it.
Okay, so if we can reconvene at 8:55, please. We're reconvening, and the request was for any comments, discussion, or motions, and Councilmember Hopping has the floor.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming. There's a lot of information going back and forth, and I think a lot of it has been excellent. As these things evolve, you learn more and more, and one of the things that is most important to all of us is to engage the community in this. It seems there's been a failure to do that, although everything has been done properly in a legal sense. I mean, we had a first hearing, this was done in a study session quite some time ago. Well, it was within I forget when the study session was, but it was in the last 45 days, I think. But word doesn't get out about those. In fact, we had a merchant meeting a month ago, and I didn't even address the smoking ban because I didn't think it was mature enough to address. I think the information has not been fully absorbed. There's a lot of good stuff in there, a lot of good intent. But I think perception is reality, so it's important to have the community at least feel that they've been heard in a lot of respects. I would like to move that we table this for 90 days until we can make sure that we have enough public outreach for people to have fully absorbed what this is. That would move this ordinance forward to that point in time. I'm not saying shelve it. I'm saying to table it for 90 days so that we can make sure that everybody has a chance for input. The last week on the street, I've learned a lot about, there have been some great ideas suggested about the way that we may be able to do this in a way that is, that has some better solutions to it, that may have better outcomes for everybody involved, yet move the ball down the road in a way that's better for Littleton in the long term. I think the feel of the community is what we really want to get here. We're a community. We're not a council that is up here just making decisions without full involvement of the community. So I'd like to move that we table it for 90 days until a date certain to a third public hearing for this sense with the purpose of having additional staff outreach and community involvement.
I will second that for a conversation.
Okay.
So I have a question. You said for a third public hearing, you mean second?
Well, this is the second hearing now,
No,
so it would be another, I don't know what the correct terminology would be. Maybe the city attorney could help, but it would be to bring this ordinance back for another public hearing.
We're on second reading of public hearing, so it would be an additional public hearing at the time that we bring the motion or bring it back.
So it's a reading with a reopening of the public hearing.
Correct.
Okay, so Council, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Discussion? Councilmember
Question
Brinkman?
for Councilmember Hopping. What are your thoughts and recommendations for the outreach, additional outreach?
I'd like to talk to staff more about that. When the precedent for this type of outreach was when the Historic Preservation District was proposed in '03, I believe it was, and there was opposition to it, and we had some public meetings. That turned out to be a 2-year negotiation, which I think was unfortunate. It had a bad outcome with an historic district that is not as effective, and I think it's cost downtown Littleton a lot of money over the years. But that was because it was totally taken off the table. I think this one, when we move it forward, it would have this structure that is here now, and we would discuss the pluses and minuses of that and perhaps fine-tune it down the road. So the form of the public outreach, I think we'd work with staff to develop that, but we could have interactive meetings with the merchants. I think staff could develop more of their information. A public hearing is anybody who's testified, and how many people tonight said they were nervous You know, it's not a conversation, it's testimony, and I think you get better interaction and better results through conversation than you do testimony. And maybe we could work with the merchants or some of the other people, and council could be involved to help move that ball forward, to really have people be able to wrap their arms around what is being proposed, what the data is that says there is or is not economic impact, whether or not vaping is something we need or want to include, and what the facts are. We don't know a lot of the stuff that I think we should be able to consider. I think it's not mature enough, as I said earlier.
Additional discussion, Council? Councilmember Beckman?
I have to say I am concerned when I learned earlier today that all the various restaurants had a separate meeting to try to figure out what was being proposed and what was going on and all that, when at the same time I'm looking at a council package that says that there was outreach in downtown. And I'm not pointing a finger in any direction, one way or the other, but, you know, if we're having a hearing about, you know, renewing a contract with somebody who sells us sewer pipes, you know, I don't think too much of the public is very involved in that. But when you start talking about downtown, you start talking about merchants, the tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars that some of the businesses have put into trying to figure out ways to cater to who they believe to be their customers, and whether it's real or perceived that it's threatened. It's a discussion, and I'm concerned that maybe we just didn't have enough of one. There's a little bit of knee-jerk reaction going on in this one, so I see some merit to that concept of continuing the discussion.
Councilmember Cole?
So I would like, if possible, to have somebody observe how many people are walking around downtown smoking. Admittedly, I'm not there at 1 in the morning, but I've been downtown quite a few times, and I cannot remember seeing anybody smoking on the sidewalk, which doesn't mean they're not down there. I did go down there once for lunch a few months ago, and there were 3 million cigarette butts on a corner, and I have no idea how all those cigarette butts got there. But I have not seen people walking around on the sidewalk smoking. So if we had some observation, that would be helpful, random observations.
Peggy, if I may, my psychiatrist is a two-wheel bicycle, and I went for a ride Saturday to try to kind of sort through this thing, and I was really struggling with it. And office on Main Street, that's where I keep my bike. And so I pulled up in front of my office door, and I'm sitting there against the handlebars just kind of collecting myself. And there's a woman about 15 feet away from me. I'm not a doorway, but she was 15 feet away. And she had a cigarette, and she flicked it right out on the street. And not only was it on the street, but it was under my car. So bad choice on her part. But then I was, saw it again in front of Smoking Fins yesterday. And I was talking to Doug Houck, Austin Houck, about this and what his views were. And a gentleman got out of a white Subaru in front of Smoking Fins, cigarette in hand, walked into the tavern and flicked it right on the street beforehand. I mean, that's my district. I office on the street. I see it a lot. I look out the window. It's going on. Take a look at the gutter in front of a few of the bars. I'm not going to name the main offender, but Mr. Beckman and I were there yesterday with Greg Renke, and we all commented on the number of cigarettes in the gutter in front of that bar. So maybe that's part of the solution, is the store owners need to work toward the solution as well. So it does happen.
Thank you.
Councilmember Valdez.
Thank you. The things that I'm hearing are things about people littering. And we have ordinances against littering. We have ordinances against smoking within 15 feet and all that good stuff. These are things we need to look at and maybe enforce. I think as far as the smoke-free campaign, I'd like to see more about that. I'd like to also have more information about the vapes, I think was what the one lady was referring to. I'd like, as I was reading through the information this weekend here, it just seemed like the vapes were kind of thrown in there. So I'm okay with delaying this 90 days, I think is what the motion is.
Okay. Part of my comments is folks talked about being respectful. I actually almost got in a physical altercation on Saturday when someone blew smoke in my wife's face. And
That'll do it.
I will tell you that there is behavior out there that I would rather not have on the sidewalks on Main Street. And for folks to talk about respectful, I have a tobacco allergy as well. My wife likes to defend me in this. And when she steps forward and then receives disrespectful treatment otherwise, I have a hard time forgiving on that. I'm looking for something that's going to work. I talked about trying to, or at least my sense of this is to deal with our front yard in a way that can be respectful, to allow for folks their personal freedoms. I'm not looking to infringe upon those, in that if they choose to smoke but go to a space that I consider less our city's space, and maybe you consider an alley an evil place, but there are merchants or restaurants that have made space for smokers and cater to those, and those are recognized. I'm willing to go 91 days because as far as a date certain, it would be December 1st. And what I heard is a stepping up on the part of the merchants to say what they're willing to do. And if it's nothing, I will be very, very disappointed, personally disappointed in that. Secondly, if there's additional data around the vaping, I'm not sure there is or not, but to hear some of that, I would probably add that piece to the discussion.
91 days, what year?
91 days is December.
I'll go 91.
91 is fine.
Councilmember Brinkman.
Or you could even say 91 days and then the next council meeting or whatever. That's your bailiwick.
That's the motion, though.
I don't support this motion, but it appears that it will probably pass. And the reason I don't support it is because I think that it's what we are doing here is actually, in my opinion, not what we're not taking away the rights of any smoker. We're not telling smokers you cannot smoke. We're simply saying that we have and we have a law that says 15 feet from every doorway. You go downtown, and there are little doorways all up and down the street. We already determined that you can't go 15 feet straight ahead of you. You're in the street. So smokers who are smoking on, for the most part, I think we could maybe find a couple pockets, places where there may be an longer stretch between doorways, but they are already in violation. So is that fair to people who are non-smokers, who know that we've adopted the Clean Air Colorado Act, and they can expect to walk down Main Street 15 feet in front of any door and not have their children or their grandparents or themselves exposed to secondhand smoke? That's what this is about. This isn't about telling any smoker you can't smoke. This is saying you can't smoke there. But what we've done is we've created a map that actually gives you more places to smoke than Main Street. And we're not affecting private property. Private property still has all their rights. The issue with the second story is an unfortunate miss in the first ordinance. That was never, I think, council's intention to do. I understand some of these places have smoking sections on their second stories. We've added back patios. So that's what this is really about. I don't want it to minimize anybody's comments that came down here tonight. I appreciate everybody coming, and I appreciate you coming down and speaking on something that's important to you. And I think that's exactly what we want the people to do in the community, and that's important. But understanding that what we're trying to do here is really trying to create an enhanced experience on Main Street. I would expect the merchants to support that. If the merchants aren't supporting that, then I think we do have to have a serious conversation as to why. So again, I'm not going to support the amendment. I'm ready to vote on this issue tonight. Looks like the amendment will pass, so I'll end my comments.
Anyone else? Council, we have...
Well, I'm not going to reiterate what's already been said because I think it's all been covered, but I guess the question would be 90-ish days does put it past the election, and since we sort of started this process, might it be better to have us take this back up and say October with an expectation that since it was our proposed ordinance, we're not kicking it to the next council to deal with? So I guess maybe question on we talked about 91 days, but what if we're like 45?
October 20th is the last date before, or last meeting before the election.
I mean, can we get enough information as per the requests between now and then to have the communications? Looks like there might be some assent in the audience to that effect. I guess I'd prefer to have it deal with it on our watch as opposed to somebody else's.
Ditto.
I guess, Bill, that's up to you.
Yeah, I would defer on that. It doesn't, I just want to do it in a way that people feel like they've been heard and there's really an opportunity to process the information. So the date itself is not as important to me as the fact that we have the opportunity for proper outreach into the community. So I see Mr. Rinke nodding his head back there that he thinks he could get on that, and as long as we have a commitment from council and staff to get the work done by then, I think that I'd be amenable to that change. But once again, I defer.
I have a question. I know that on October 20th, 2 council members will be absent. How do we deal with a vote? 3 of the 5 then would be?
Correct. Three of the 5 to pass it.
No pressure.
Why can you do it?
Well, Bill, you made a motion for 91 days. So if you
right, so I'm not as familiar with procedure as you are, Phil. So
It's being offered as a friendly amendment. If not, it will be a friendly adjustment.
Let me ask, is it, I think anytime you have a controversial issue, you want to have as much opinion on it as you can with, as many votes as you can. I'd hate to have any issue come up that would normally be 4-3, but because two people are absent, it becomes, 3-2 the other direction.
It can always be reconsidered later.
If you're not going to change the motion, we got to vote on it.
Everybody's looking at me.
Well, it's because you made the motion.
No pressure was the comment.
No pressure.
Wait, comment?
So,
I'm one of the people who cannot be here October 20th.
Can we do a special meeting on October 28th?
well, I have a question. Since we have an election, then we install new people. But as part of that night when new people are installed, wouldn't we, the current council, have this issue?
We can add it to the agenda on November 3rd and use that as a date certain.
The new council sits November
17th. But wouldn't we consider this?
So
the existing council consider it?
I'll offer it to be November 3rd when we'll all be present.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
I think that's preferable to having 5 people.
Okay. Jerry,
yes.
is that okay?
I would accept that friendly amendment. Yes.
Okay, so
So we're going to do date certain, November 3rd.
November 3rd. Okay, council, with that change, any additional comments, questions? Okay.
Wait. The National League of Cities.
I don't Okay. Council, the motion is to table to a date certain, being November 3rd, 2015. Council ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor, with Councilmember Brinkman voting no. The motion carries 6-1.
Okay. Thank you, Council. We move on to Ordinance 8B, Ordinance 24-2015. This is an ordinance amending the city code concerning temporary outdoor displays of merchandise in C, A, and B2 zones to eliminate the number of days each month when outdoor displays of merchandise shall be allowed. Deputy City Manager Broughton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Again, this is an issue that you're all acutely aware of. This specifically addresses the outdoor displays, and the current limit of 3 days has been removed, as well as we've adjusted the 20 square feet that was allowable down to 10 square feet. All other aspects of the displays stay as it is currently in code, and this adjustment should work for the merchants as well. This was discussed at a merchants meeting by Eric Irving, who is in the economic development staff, at their September meeting, and he received applause when this proposal was presented. Okay. Along with that, they'll also have another ordinance here shortly discussing items on the right-of-way that I can get into after, but happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Council, any questions? Yes. Councilmember Valdez.
On the subject of fences that are permanent, this doesn't address that?
No, this is specific to display items, merchant displays in the right-of-way, on the sidewalks. You may be looking at the next ordinance, which would be...
I'm sorry, which... I'm on 86.
We're on 24.
This is Ordinance 24-2015. I'm sorry, Jerry.
Never mind.
Okay. Any other questions, Council?
Yeah.
Councilmember Cole.
So can you elaborate a little bit on why we would reduce from 20 square feet to 10, and what actually might be displayed, kind of things that could be displayed in just 10 square feet?
The display items would be up entirely to the merchants themselves. They'd go through an application process, and on that application process, they would have to list the merchandise the kind of merchandise that they'd have to be displayed, or that they care to display. It's not necessarily the exact merchandise, but give an idea of the kind of things, whether it's T-shirts or
Well, I'm
lotions
thinking
or
more
something
how
like
it
that.
gets displayed and the kind of, I mean, they have to be
And
in
it-
some kind of structure. They're not
Correct, and that would be entirely, again, up to the merchants themselves.
just... So why 10 rather than 20?
Well, we allowed for 20 initially to address for the reduced number of days. So the thought was reduce the square footage allowed, but give them unlimited days. Presumably, they wouldn't have to display as much if they're allowed to do it every day.
And it also was a statement request from the merchant saying they didn't need the full 20 square feet, and 10 square
Okay,
feet would be
thank you.
sufficient.
That helps. Thank you.
That too.
Okay. Any other questions, Council? Okay. Seeing none, thank you, Deputy City Manager. We will open the public hearing at 9:20 p.m. We have 7 members on the list, 5 in favor, 2 indicating opposition. I will again read the 3 names, and if they can approach, that would be wonderful to help move us along. First up is Barb Robinson, Russ Robinson, and El Marcone are the 3.
Russ Robinson, I own Grandpa's Attic, 5729 South Curtis Street. And as you all know, I am in favor of this ordinance. I would like to thank you for working with the merchants and coming to a compromise position that we all can live with. This is what we have been looking for all along, to allow us to manage our business and properly display our wares. So again, thank you very much. And as I told the city manager, that if it does pass tonight on second reading, I'll be the first one down pulling a permit. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. El Marcone, Richard Olson, and Jeannie Erickson. How about Sharon Sissel?
Are they all for?
Richard Olson is against. Jeannie Erickson is for. Sharon Sissel is against. Lou Sullivan, for. Seeing none. Anyone else willing to? Kim?
I don't really want to say
Your
one
name,
way.
please.
My name is Kim Glidden, 5739 South Curtis. I guess what I would say is this is the second time that something has occurred, alluded to discussing it with the merchants, and I am a merchant, and I was never, no one discussed this with me. And once again, I want to say to council that the historic downtown Littleton merchants does not represent the downtown merchants. And this was something that was referred to a little bit ago regarding parking. And so when the city manager says we will discuss it with downtown merchants, I hope that means all merchants. You must know who we all are. And to simply go to a hoodlum meeting, which I refuse to go to, I do not find this organization credible. I find it insulting when I don't get the information and yet you think it comes to me. So, you know, I'm fine with how the ordinance is, but the process of how it got there, I wasn't part of. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Anyone else looking to approach? Greg?
Greg Ranke, 5663 South Prince Street, and by the way, I'm much more comfortable with this particular conversation. I want to thank the council for working through this and getting this where the merchants are absolutely pleased to death. In fact, we had a full house at our last meeting. Councilman Hopping was there and Councilman Beckman, and when Eric from the city read what they were doing, they cheered and clapped. So I just want you to know that the Merchant Association absolutely endorses what you're doing. The 10 square feet is not a problem. We think that's fine. That's plenty. And also, as far as getting the insurance, we've told all of our members that they absolutely have to do that, and they will fill out permits. We've only had one person say they were uncomfortable with the insurance, and I said, if it was your property, you'd want to be additionally insured too. So we wholeheartedly applaud you and thank you for what you've done.
Thank you, Greg. Anyone else? Seeing none, we're closing the public hearing at 9:24 p.m. Council looking for discussion and a motion.
I move to approve ordinance 24-2015 on second reading, amending the city code concerning temporary outdoor display of merchandise in the CA and B2 zones to eliminate the number of days each month when outdoor displays of merchandise shall be allowed.
Second.
Council, we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, council ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, council. Next up is agenda item 8C, ordinance 86-2015. This is an ordinance amending the city code concerning structures on public rights-of-way. Deputy City Manager Broughton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. This is related to the prior item. This came about during the same discussion, and specifically Mr. Ranke's comments on insurance and items in the right-of-way. So a number of merchants have benches, potters, or pots or planters, or table seating that they've allowed, or that has been allowed and just not officially allowed by code. This would make it, again, permissible, legal to have that. They just have to come down to the city and, again, get a revocable permit. There's one item that we'd actually like to address in the proposed ordinance. We'd like to actually revise it. In the ordinance, it says that this is on line 40, the first page of the ordinance. Said permit may be issued only to property owners which abut public rights of way, et cetera, et cetera. We'd like to make that so that the leasee, not necessarily the owner, can apply for the permit, but would have to get the approval of the property owner. In that case, there's the strike-through language if you'd like to see it.
Okay. Leave that display up, please.
Certainly will.
Okay. Council, any questions?
You answered my question right there.
Okay. Seeing none, thank you, Deputy City Manager.
Well, I'm sorry.
Do you have another question?
Yeah.
I thought he answered it already.
Well, on insurance, that was my question, if it was an insurance holder, name, or all that good stuff. So on the fences then, fences that are semi-permanent versus fences that may be just put out each day, is that addressed, either one, that one is allowed to stay while the other one must be removed?
When you say temporary fence, what kind of fencing?
I believe he's referring to railings.
Railings, fences, like with the patios, and I'm not against them at all.
Sure.
Some of the establishments down there have the railings or the fences. But others just have tables.
Sure.
So the tables have to be brought in, or can they be bolted to the side of the wall?
This would allow them to be on the sidewalk. The tables could.
And then after hours,
they'd be allowed to stay there through
they would be able to either leave the table there or.
So and with the existing patios that are down there, say with railings, the tavern actually has a raised sidewalk piece. That was done through a revocable permit, which is the same process that these will go through. And during the discussions with the merchants through this entire process, they've brought those up, and so this puts them on the same footing as those.
So now if someone who just has a table out there, they can actually leave the table out there for folks to use after hours?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes,
Thank you.
so again, so these would be bolted or not bolted?
I think that would be described when they actually came in and came in with the application.
So I do have a few concerns if they're not bolted and left out overnight. It would seem to me some not too savory people might just smash them through a window.
Mm-hmm. I would, if you took a stroll downtown, I don't think that any of the benches or tables that are currently down there that stay out overnight that would fall into this category, very few, if any, are actually bolted down.
Okay.
Now,
but there are some bolted down. I saw that Sunday night.
There may be, and some of those may be under the permit, the patio permit already.
And some based on the merchant will actually cable them together so that they would be
secured.
More difficult to move.
Sure.
Phil.
Yes. Councilmember Rinkman.
So do we have a specific sized area that this would be allowed in?
That would be covered under the revocable. It's not really covered in here, but there's limitations in the revocable permits. It has to make sense for what's being provided, and it's already within the revocable permit language, I believe.
It has to make sense.
Handy by chance?
Well, so an application is
Could
filed.
that start now?
An application is filed with the Public Works Department that shows a site plan of what the proposed, bench or seating, where it would be, and then that would be part of the approval process as a review by Public Works to make sure that there's adequate clearance for ADA compliance, that it's actually in front of the property for the owner that's applying for the permit. So it's the same process that we go through now for fences and other obstructions that are allowed to be placed in the right-of-way under this process.
My other question then is, so do we have an enforcement plan?
Well, this would put everything down there finally covered in code. So yes, the plan would be to start a public outreach campaign for these, just as we did when you passed the initial display ordinance. And so this would be rolled into that display ordinance information campaign, and we can get that out to the merchants, all of the merchants.
How are we enforcing?
So the enforcement would be through code enforcement.
Oh, and a permit.
Correct, yeah.
There has to be an
There's a permit
application.
process, but for those individuals who maybe don't follow the permit process and continue to place it out there, that'd be through code enforcement.
Other comments, questions? Okay. Seeing none, I will now restate to open the public meeting at 9:31 p.m. There's 10 individuals listed on the roster, 7 in favor of the ordinance, 3 in opposed. Follow the same procedure. First up, Barbara Robinson, Russ Robinson, Phyllis Trujillo, who I don't see, and Greg Reinke.
Russ Robinson, 5729 South Curtis Street, and I'm in favor of this. It puts the other merchants on the same sheet of paper as the restaurants with a revocable license, and that we can put patios or tables or chairs. I currently have a small table and 2 chairs out in front of my store for my customers to sit in, or just people walking down the street to sit on. And this will allow me to continue to put that out there for their convenience, and it's nicely displayed, nice color. I've had lots of compliments on it. In fact, a lot of people have asked me where I got it from. So again, I'm in favor of passing this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. Greg? Thank you. I do not see Phyllis or DJ. S. Nicolau? Leah? And Jeannie Erickson and Lou Sullivan? And Leah's against.
A projector again, please.
There you go. It's there.
This is the Grove. Leah, you're up.
Leah, this is the Grove.
No.
That's the information.
Oh,
Yes, and it is relevant to this.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm sorry.
Thanks. Planters and benches are lovely, but I hope you'll deny this ordinance tonight, at least in the form that it is now. If you look closely at the ordinance, the language strikes out the decision-making power of the Public Works Director and hands all decision-making power to the city manager or designee. Why in the world should a city manager have sole authority over what is clearly a public works issue? We're talking about rights of way. That's the purview of public works. Separation of duties exists for a very good reason, and that is to protect the public from abuses of power or to reduce the risk of errors due to lack of expertise. What level of expertise could or should a city manager or designee be expected to have regarding rights of way? Decisions regarding this should be left solely in the hands of the public works experts. Secondly, this may just be a coincidence, but I think there could be an ulterior motive for this, or at least a dual purpose. You'll see in your packets this much more clearly, but this is the landscaping plan for the Grove. Need a pointer. Curbed planters are part of this plan. If you look at the memo that I also included in there, this is a review of the Grove from June 16th. Can we get that zoom in at all, please? Thank you. Public Works Department, Bob Deeds, has said a revocable license will be required for the structures in the planting boxes within the public right-of-way, and that document has to be in hand before any permits can be issued. So what it looks like to me, based on the lack of transparency that this project has been having, is perhaps trying to get the chains of, what's the word I'm looking for? Different departments have to all be involved in this, and there should be a separation of that. Everything goes through a process. So something to do with sidewalks should be kept in the Public Works Department. This looks like a benign little ordinance, but given the timing of the new plans that have come through and just a number of things that we've seen, I am concerned that this may be an attempt to get Public Works out of the way to make the approval process easier. So I'm hoping maybe you can keep this within the purview of Public Works, or maybe limit this to just planters downtown. It shouldn't be citywide, and it shouldn't be a city manager decision. That's kind of micromanaging, if you ask me. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. Lou, and then Pam.
Lou Sullivan, District 1. And I think you see on my sheet, first I circled no, and then I made it yes, because I do support the downtown merchants in this area, but my no was because of the same reasons that Leah spoke of, is I don't understand why it should be taken away from the Director of Public Works, and I am concerned about it just staying downtown Littleton and not extending into other parts of the city. So if there's a way that you can make an amendment or a motion to change that part, then I am in favor for it, as long as it helps the downtown merchants. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Pam?
I'm Pam Chadbourne, living at Crestline in Nevada, block and a half away. Same comment. I would urge you to amend this in two ways. Make it applicable to downtown only, and don't do the strike-throughs that remove the authority to allow this. Don't take it away from the Department of Public Works. Let it remain with the Department of Public Works. So the issue with planters downtown seems reasonable. That's a place where we know, we have planned that we have sidewalks that are crowded and have a lot of things on them. We also know that that introduces, those fences have been a problem for snow clearance and other kinds of public works issues ever since they got put up. Those permanent fences for the restaurants, trying to clear snow around them has been a problem for those guys. So Public Works knows day to day what the problems are with, and I'm going to be specific about this, obstacles on the public right-of-way. They're the people who work with it. They know if there's stones around them or ice or snow or whatever. And they can tell whether it's a good position or place for the obstacle or not. So let's do it in downtown, because we've already planned that downtown has crowded sidewalks and that there's going to be stuff on the right-of-way. We don't need it in the rest of the city, because in the rest of the city we have easement, we have requirements for setbacks. So you don't need this in the rest of the city. There shouldn't be stuff on the sidewalk. And to iterate what Leah said, the Grove should not have a wall on the edge of the public right-of-way. Because of our open space requirements in code, along public rights-of-way, not the railroad private right-of-way, the Grove should not have a wall on the right-of-way, and there shouldn't be any of these obstacles proposed for the sidewalks. So I urge you, please, tonight, restrict this to downtown, where this is the environment that we plan. Do not make this citywide, because this should not enable the Grove. And definitely keep it with the Director of Public Works. From a management point of view, Mark Ralph is the guy who works with the people who come in and say, you know, I've got a lot of trouble with this snow clearance or ice or whatever, or stones building up around this obstacle. So this is not the place for it. He's the guy who knows. The city manager does not. The city manager has a job to manage 400 people, and he shouldn't be concerned with obstacles in the public right-of-way. So please amend this ordinance, support the downtown merchants, but do not enable obstructions on public right-of-way anywhere other than where we've planned it downtown, and definitely leave the authority where it belongs with Public Works. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you, Pam. That completes the roster. Anyone else looking to approach? Seeing none, close the public hearing at 9:42. Council looking for discussion, comments, or a motion?
Maybe you had some.
Peggy had first.
Peggy.
So, in terms of the city manager doing this or his designee, this seems to me in keeping with what we did before when we have taken out a particular employee designation so that there's some flexibility as needs change. So rather than having to keep amending ordinances to say it's this person or this department or whatever, the city manager is doing it. I'm not thinking the city manager is wanting to do all these things himself, but to have the leeway to designate the employee who will do it. Am I right on that?
Correct. As we go through the code, this is one of the sort of global modernizations that we're putting in throughout, and you'll see it come back to you in ordinance as we bring it forward to move away from referring to a specific employee's title and instead put in the phrase city manager or designee. And this is to address if at some point in the future we don't have a public works department, but we have an engineering department or development services, or we call it something different, it's captured. The city manager obviously is going to designate review of revocable permits to our currently existing public works department. He's not going to be reviewing revocable permits. And so you'll see this consistent. I think it's consistent with our past practice and what you'll see going forward as well.
Councilmember Brinkman.
Mike? So explain how we manage then if a particular store wants to both have the merchandise and then also have planters and a table and you know, I mean, how do we manage, where do we draw lines, or do we?
Mm-hmm. Both applications would require a site plan in their submittal, and in doing so, we'd evaluate the clearances that are allowed or that are required in the ordinance for both the display and as well as the revocable permit. So one has 6 feet, one has 5 feet for clearances, and we would it would be handled as in a case-by-case basis, just depending on what other items that might be in the right-of-way: tree grates, trees, signs, bike racks, et cetera, et cetera.
So the clearances are, you say 5 or 6 feet, that's for walking past?
Correct, yes.
Are there any designations of clear or space along the storefront, not coming out, but going along? So if you're Colorado Frame, I'm just thinking of her because she's a long stretch. Is there any size limit there?
The size,
Yeah.
well, it's specific, for the display ordinance, should they care to do that, that'd be limited to 10 square feet. And so that would have to be, we'd have to see how that came in. And then if there was a desire also to do a bench, to do whatever, there's no necessary limitation, but it just depends on that there's a pedestrian access is maintained through it.
Thanks.
While you're up here, Mike, might you comment on areas within the city that this might apply to?
Sure. As it's written, it does apply to citywide. If there is a desire to target the downtown, you'd have to do it just like the display ordinance and make it applicable to CA and B2 zones, because half of downtown is B2.
Okay. Thank you.
So another question then. So would there not be an advantage to at least initially limit this to downtown so that we get some sense of how this works? Because if somebody has bothered to get a permit to do it elsewhere, and then we discover really this is not real workable all over the place,
Sure.
then they got to pay to take something out and dispose of whatever they paid good money for. So it seems to me trying this out first is better.
That's a policy decision on your part. The likelihood, I think, that someone may come in from elsewhere in the city is very slim, just given the kind of the requirements that would be laid out here, but that's a policy decision on council's part.
Councilmember Valdez.
I guess to the council then, I would like to have added to this.
Would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I will. I'll make a motion that we use the same, that we limit the boundary for...
Start with the whole ordinance and then
For this ordinance on number 86, I would like to add to it limitations on the boundary of it, which would be to the south, Alamo Avenue, to the east, Rio Grande Ave, to the north, West Power Ave, to the east, Santa Fe. And part of my reason on that is because when I the real driver on this ordinance as well as the last ordinance.
That's the motion. Let's see if we...
Oh, I'm sorry. That's my motion.
Second.
Wait, can I just clarify, though, that what you're limiting is the planters, benches, and other seating, correct? Because we use this ordinance citywide for residents to put their fences in public rights of way.
So this is well beyond just...
Yeah, yes, this ordinance is used throughout the city, and what we've added in here about planters, benches, and other seating is directed towards what we've heard from the merchants downtown, and so I would ask that the motion be to amend it for those three things to be encapsulated in that downtown area.
So we can encapsulate it to this downtown.
Right, I'm just clarifying that you mean that just the benches?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what the whole driver is on, whether it's the sidewalk merchandise or this item. It's the whole driver has been about.
And can you, in your motion, include the strikeout that we saw earlier that refers to the property owners that Mike had suggested for the second reading?
What?
Doug, can you bring it up?
Oh, the ad that he had.
Right.
That's insurance policies.
It would essentially allow the leasee of the property, with consent of the property owner, to also apply for a permit. Currently, only property owners can apply for revocable permits.
If I could add that to the same motion, if my second is agreeable.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so we now have a motion and a second on the table with clarifications. Council discussion? Councilmember Beckman?
I would prefer not to do the amendment. I think when we get into micromanaging, we just never know how it's going to turn out. And I'll give you an example. 5280 is not part of that area, but 5280 has a sidewalk, and 5280 might want to avail itself of this. Right next to it, just to the north of 5280, is what has been a glass shop and a curio shop, and they have put signs out there in the past. So they might want to. You go back down the alley from them, there's a place that was an art gallery, and right by the bunker store. They would be excluded from being able to do it on their sidewalk area. I just think we make mistakes here we don't intend to do, but we might be unintentionally limiting it, and I think that was a very legitimate concern that was expressed a little bit on the whole issue of that we put off for 90 days, is we are focusing on a very limited area to the exclusion of others, and why are we doing that?
Is that a motion to amend the motion to exclude the restricted area for planters, et cetera?
I just would prefer to vote no on what's been.
We already have a motion that we have to vote on first.
We could amend the motion.
He can't, I can.
Right, I know. That's why I said, I asked. So.
No, I'm going to agree with Councilmember Beckman. I think the prior ordinance made sense for the merchants downtown because it was a specific issue to downtown. I think the ability to put planters and fences and benches and so forth extends well beyond, and I would not like to see us constrain our ability to treat other retail areas with the same oversight we have as need be. So
I'll ask the same question. Are you looking to amend the main motion?
No, I was offering comment on Jerry's amendment.
No, Jerry's was the main motion, which has a restricted area to CAB2 by those boundaries.
No, I was making
Excuse
a motion.
me. The motion right now is to approve as amended. He made the motion to approve the ordinance with the amendments.
Right. That's why I said that's the main motion.
Okay, so that is, yeah, as opposed to the original
Yes.
right, motion with an amendment. Okay.
Yes, he didn't do it that way.
Okay, so then I guess it's probably, in my mind, cleaner to.
That's not how I thought I made the motion. I was making a motion to add that, to only add it to what we have here.
What's on the table, I'll make the distinction. Okay, is the ordinance 86-2015 with, as was included in our package, with the strikeout that staff has suggested and the restriction to planters, et cetera, within the CAB2 boundaries that you've described.
Yes.
That's the main motion.
Okay.
If you want that to apply elsewhere, then you have to make a motion to amend what is now on the table as the main motion.
Okay, point of order then. We can vote on this, and depending on the outcome of this vote, we could go back.
I would like to withdraw my motion because that was not the intent. I do want to, once someone makes a motion for this, then I'll go back to amend.
You have to agree to that, right, on the second.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Is this Abbott and Costello?
We can allow them to withdraw the motion. Okay, so we have no motion on the table at the moment, Council.
I move to approve the ordinance on second reading, amending the city code concerning structures on public rights of way.
Second.
Now you have a motion.
Okay, can we look for the strikeout to be included as staff has suggested?
I guess I was assuming it was in there.
It has to be added in.
All right. I move to approve the ordinance on second reading, amending the city code as modified by the staff with the strike-through language concerning structures on public rights of way.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Now.
And I would like to make a motion.
Okay.
I would like to add in restrictive or limitation on the boundaries. From the east, it would be Rio Grande Street. To the north, what goes up past Powers? Berry? Mm-hmm. Berry. To the north, Berry. To the east, Santa Fe. And to the south, is that Church?
And this is applying to the planters, et cetera.
Yes. Yes. But that's the limitations of boundaries that I would like to add to this.
Wait a minute. So Santa Fe's to the west, isn't it?
I'm sorry, if I didn't say west, I meant west.
Yeah, second.
So what I did is I expanded it north
Okay,
and south.
we have an amendment on the table to the main motion for consideration. Discussion. Okay. Again, this is an amendment to the main motion, and it has to do with restricting planters and that collection in a geographic area that Jerry has outlined. Does anyone have any questions on that? Okay, Council, we have a motion and a second on the table. Again, this is an amendment to the main motion.
The vote is 4 in favor, with Councilmember Stallman, Councilmember Cernanek, and Councilmember Brinkman voting no. The motion carries 4-3.
Okay, so we now have an amended main motion on the table. So it is, as was in the package, including the strikeouts suggested by staff and restricting the planters to the area that Jerry has identified. Any questions on the motion to be considered? Okay. Council ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Council, that concludes our agenda for the evening. And everyone have a wonderful Labor Day weekend.
All before 10. Good job.